national parties and their presidential candidates, with the Eastern establishment assiduously fostering the process behind the scenes, moved closer together and nearly met in the center with almost identical candidates and platforms, although the process was concealed as much as possible by the revival of obsolescent or meaningless war cries and slogans, often going back to the Civil War. The argument that the two parties should represent opposed ideals and policies, one, perhaps of the right and the other of the left, is a foolish idea acceptable only to the doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties should be almost identical, so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extreme shifts in policy. Either party in office becomes in time corrupt, tired, unenterprising, and vigorless. Then it should be possible to replace it, every 4 years if necessary, by the other party, which will be none of these things, but will still pursue, with new vigor, approximately the same basic policies.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Disclosure Now. Interesting times we all live in. It's election night, as you all know. That quote was shared to me by my good friend Dan Armstrong, who should be joining us in a second, and I thought it was poignant and interesting, so I decided to start the show with it. But yeah, I guess for me, one of the reasons why I want to do this is not so let's tell people to vote or not vote or who to vote for, but just to say, no matter what happens, chill out. Like, don't freak out. Like, that's what they want people to do is react, freak out. We're all in this together, and that's really all I wanted to say. And I did not participate in the election. Brian did, so it's not like I'm here to tell people not to or anything like that. It's just it felt good for me to just sit this one out. To be honest with you, it felt really good to just not participate. But Brian did. Dan's from Canada. He's not able to participate. But yeah, he has a lot of interesting thoughts on the political process from an academic standpoint, and we were kind of talking about it a little bit today. And I invited some other people to the show. I'm not sure who will all show up, but anyway, welcome to the show, Dan, and of course Brian. I know you have some things you wanted to say today as well, so welcome to you as well.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Rakeem. Hey, Dan, how are you doing today, brother?
Good. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah. Well, hopefully up in Canada, I mean, with Cass Trudeau up there, Trudeau, that should be interesting to see how they're looking on, or with
they're
bated
already
breath.
planning on packing him up. His own party is revolting against him now.
Isn't a revolt in Ottawa?
Well, just with it, there's like a secret list of MPs that basically don't have confidence with him as a leader and are asking for him to step down and to choose a new party leader. Because in Canada, you don't vote for the prime minister. The prime minister is just the leader of the political party that wins the election.
So here we have electoral shenanigans, the Electoral College, which from day one was meant to subvert the will of the people. And then I'm sure many people in our audience know that we're under maritime law. And that's why in government buildings, you have the U.S. flags with a gold fringe around it, which is related to the English royalty and the bloodlines, of course, which brings us to this. Part of what inspired this discussion today, other than it being election night, was Arkeem and I did a wonderful, amazing show last night. We recorded it with Chris Latterer, and we believe we ran into some interference. So we're going to have to re-record. And it's okay, because election night is very apropos. We're glad to be here with you and everybody else. And we wanted to, as members of the full disclosure movement, whether we're on the testifier side, which I put Arkeem and you on, or the organizer side, which I put more myself on, let's bring this perspective to the 2024 elections. And I've got a lot to say also because of my experience as an organizer with people who've been through the civil rights movements and electoral politics and even revolutionary movements and situations. How do like what they taught me, how do I bring that analysis? I wanted to share it with everybody here to kind of get it away from a lot of dispel a lot of the confusion. And so I guess before I jump on my soapbox, I don't want to see me if Arkeem had anything that you wanted to jump in on.
Well,
And
here's where I'm at, I guess. It's just like I've been coming more and more to the realization of how deep it goes with how the CIA sort of just orchestrates events and just makes stuff happen. And then we think like things are, oh, that just happened. Like that's an event and it's real when it's just orchestrated, it's actors. And I just kind of question that anything that I'm seeing right now is actually real. Like as far as this red versus blue back and forth, like creating emergency, creating chaos, then hey, I'm gonna save you kind of thing. I don't know. I just feel like I've been disillusioned by it, and I know that a lot of people.
I don't think your opinion is alone. You know, there's one of the U.S. presidents. I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, "There's very rarely incidents that are surprises in politics." He's like, in fact, they're almost never. So I think everything is very theatrical, like you're saying, just to like affirm your position there. I'll try to find the quote later, Arkeem, but I don't think it's a very I think it's a very reasonable position.
Well, I'm just learning about things like even like it goes deep, like Apple being created as a company, Microsoft, these people, they're very likely assets. A lot of these celebrities as well that they put in mainstream culture, assets to set up events to make things happen. And it gets to the point where I know a lot of people are talking about. I mean, let's be real. We've been talking about the deep state and with the shadow government or whatever for a long time, and then to have a actual political candidate come on TV and talk about the shadow government and call a lot of these people out. I know that's invigorating to a lot of people, and I know that's why a lot of people put a lot of faith in Donald Trump. And I'm not here to knock people for that. All I'm saying is I just, from my standpoint, question how much is real, how much is orchestrated, and I just feel like my main message in this is not to tell people like you shouldn't vote or who to vote for or they're stupid if they voted for so or whatever. That's not why I'm here. I'm more or less saying I think that we all know that very likely when this comes out, people are gonna freak out. Whether it's doesn't really matter which side wins, people are gonna freak out whether on either side. And I think that it's just that's the thing that I'm worried about, and I'm worried about the division that we're seeing in the United States when I think that we really basically all want the same thing. But a lot of people are more mentally.
That's one of the most important, is actually realizing the falsity in the division, and that in reality, most people from most walks of life all have the same basic needs. And that's the same whether it's the United States or anywhere else on planet Earth. It's actually amazing that this construct is created to get people to think that they're such different things. In fact, they're just two different distractions from the actual issues that need to be addressed most of the time.
But I want to hear Brian's perspective on this because I know he has some opinions on some of the things going on, orchestrated or not, kind of his opinion on it is.
Yeah. Thank you, Arkeem. So I'll kind of lead all of this off with some bullet points here, which will help to provide framework of where I'm coming from here. Proofs for things on the surface just totally not being what's the reality, or at least what they're projecting on the surface. Where people, like you've two both mentioned, it seems like people are so confused in this day and age about a lot of things. It's like, Peanut the squirrel, is that truly viral or is it a distraction? And then at the same time, people might say, well, it is truly viral, but in the scheme of things, how important is it to other things? So then is it a distraction whether or not it was a psyop or not, right? So these are just some things I'm throwing out there on the table.
Right?
Exactly. And I've got,
squirrel.
And as an animal lover, and I know we all are here,
there's a lot of people are upset over that.
Oh, yeah.
And rightfully so. we should care about our animals and each other and everything. So I understand why people got upset about that. It's not unreasonable.
Yep. Then I'm going to talk about 2020 election theft is in there. And then that's just kind of more just the height of the 3D matrix and kind of an organizer perspective. And then, of course, having you two here, especially, I wanted to bring in the Montauk Project time travel, ascension timeline aspects here, where we're dealing with clones and body doubles. We're dealing with shifting agendas
Yeah,
where,
it's interesting. The what's her name? Kim Gogan.
Mhm.
I follow United Network News, and they put out a lot of information, so not maybe not like as closely as they could, but she's saying that he's been replaced by a clone. I have no idea if that's true or not. But I just this is where I'm at. I don't know what the hell is going on anymore. And I know I care about my life, my people, getting disclosure out there, and I want what's best for the country, the world, or whatever. But from my perspective, just got tired of putting my energy into it, tired of caring about it, tired of putting energy into candidates and having them not be what I expected them to. That's happened to me before, stuff like that. And
Yeah,
the last thing I ever want to do is give some sort of like dark warlock or something like that. That like
well, well,
it's,
Arkim,
you know,
Ar- well, Arkim, having said that, this is part of the time travel and secret space program aspects. You yourself, with us on another show at least, have testified that you had recall of seeing Trump or an alter an
yeah,
aspect of Trump on another planet for perhaps a mission
pretty
or an
fucking
escort,
crazy,
right?
but yeah.
So let's we'll bring that up there. I'm just throwing that in. And this, on the topic of clones, body doubles, and shifting agendas, I'm throwing in Elon and Putin as well. Then there's Trump and his own family regarding time travel and Tesla and all of this. Baron Trump and the books, that were written. I'm sure our audience is
Yeah.
familiar.
So I understand from my understanding, and I've explained it like before, but I mean it's a good time to reiterate. There's an alternate timeline where Hillary won and it was really bad, and World War III happened, and it was just really bad.
That
Um,
was the last thing on my list there, Arkeem.
yeah.
Is
So
all
so
Hillary
I just
timelines are really bad. Wait.
just
How
got
bad?
brought in. I think there's
Nuclear wars, zombie apocalypses, was it?
no, that's not what it was. Well, I think there's maybe different versions, but what I remember was what's it called? Neutrino bombs. Because that's what I think it was. Because all the buildings were still standing, but like everybody was dead. And they say that neutrino bombs do that, I guess. Because that's what I remember about it. It's like most people died, but like there's buildings everywhere, and the the cities more or less looked or intact. Maybe like some overgrown trees and stuff like that or whatever. But other than that, they like this. The buildings were all intact and stuff. So that's what was weird about it. But like, yeah, I think that what it is honestly is he's a time traveler. He knows some things. He was approached maybe, and this is the thing is I just question because I know that these events are like all set up. The CIA is involved in a lot of this stuff, and yeah, I've encountered him, and I've encountered him in instances where it was very positive. Like one time I ran. These are the memories I have, and it's just I'm just saying them. They're bizarre to me, but these are the memories that I have. One of them is we're at the top of a deep underground military base. I'm with four other guys. It was a squad of five. He's given some speech to us. He's like, these guys, they risked their lives. They did all this stuff, and we cleared this place out. And he's like, they don't even get any credit for it. People don't even know about it. Can you believe this? Like, he was being Trump, you know what I mean? He's just like, what heroes or whatever. And but yeah, and you could tell he was freaked out by being there at this base where all these terrible things had happened and stuff like that. So he gave a speech really fast and he got the fuck out of there. But like it was still, he was there. I remember that. And then another thing that I remember too, the other memory that I have of him is like this one was more recent. It was during the most recent eclipse here on Earth, is when it happened. Is when we got taken. We got taken to this planet called Belmont, and we were on this planet, and it was for this eclipse festival. The moon going across the sun. It only happened just the right way. It only happened like every 600 something years or something like that. So it was this like huge festival, and I remember I saw him in like this giant hall. Like I didn't really talk to him. I was just walking through there, but he was wearing like this gray, like Roman almost looking robe, and all the other people that were with him were wearing it too. And they're like having this conversation. You could have made like you could have made a what's it called, a Renaissance painting out of it. Like they're all standing there and they're all talking. That's kind of what it reminded me of. It was like a Renaissance painting. And then later on, I was on an elevator and I was going up to my room that I had, and we were staying in this fancy fucking hotel. Everything's made out of marble and stuff. And I remember he comes on the elevator, and we were standing there awkwardly for a second, and he just says to me, "So you having a good time? You enjoying yourself? Whatever." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you know about the migration tomorrow of the birds, these cranes or whatever?" He said the exact name of them. I can't remember what they were, but he was like, "Yeah, do you know? Like, have you heard about it?" And I'm like, "I'm not actually really familiar with that." But he's like, it happens in the morning, and everybody always parties because of the eclipse, and they miss out on the migration. He's like, it's really beautiful. If you can, you watch it, basically. And I was like, oh, cool. And like, I got off the elevator, and he was still going. I was like, all right, see ya. That was the conversation I had. I don't really have the context, but I remember when I stood next to him, I didn't have feelings of apprehension or like this guy's bad or evil or anything like that. It was just like, oh, it was just awkward. I didn't know what to say to him. That was really all it was. It was like I kind of didn't know what to say. And he broke the ice by talking about the birds.
And Arkeem, we were just discussing this earlier today. We were talking about the show tonight. You know, your own encounters with most of these politicians and celebrities and mucky mucks in these programs isn't generally so congenial that they're telling you, hey, kid, make sure to see the birds tomorrow. Usually it's along much nastier lines, right? And
yeah,
and
I just
Dan,
question
correct me if I'm
because I
wrong.
know that I'm involved in Montauk kind of stuff and secret projects and weird shit, and maybe it was involved, maybe it was connected to that. I always question my memories, but yeah, I'm not like I just basically just yeah, I just question the political theater, I guess, that we all see playing out,
And
and I question the division that we've seen, because I do know that there's like been a lot, like for instance, Facebook controlled by DARPA. They've been basically caught manufacturing division, basically caught
yeah.
like creating wars in foreign countries and shit like this. And it's just like and now I see what's going on in the United States. And I'm like, oh, a war's gonna break out, civil war, and it's like, okay, what's really going on here? You know what I mean? Like with all this stuff, like it just feels like set up. It just feels set up to me. I don't know.
But let me speak to the division and all of this. And I'll come back to my bullet points and flesh out the discussion a bit with, some perspective here that might be helpful. And your testimony that you just gave us right now, Arkeem, is very much consistent with the things that I'm getting from our friend Lily Nova, and other people in the community who are getting, like Elizabeth April. I don't even know her personally, but I've been watching her YouTube, and a lot of the messages are very similar. And this is my understanding. Okay, like we mentioned before, the Trump family and time travel and getting to deal with this. And also, let's add the galactic perspective here. Okay, the galactics need to be, and this is what I'm learning from everyone in our community, like Audrey Walters and other friends. They need people to be able to deal with, like they need spokespeople of humanity to represent us as a species to them. And they're not like up there hosting a popularity contest for us and our leadership down here to be like,
Yeah,
well,
you know
we don't
who's
wait,
another guy I see at this kind of
yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
You know, the guy that I see at this kind of stuff out there in space and things like that is Jesse Ventura. I've
Okay,
seen
and
him in space.
is he cool or not?
He's great.
Okay, good.
The memory that I have of him that's like clear, and it makes sense to me when you look into him, because he was like going on like national TV saying 9/11 was an inside job, and he was trying to like it would make sense why they would pick him, right? But the memory that I have is like I was on a ship and like there was some meeting was arranged and I was supposed to talk to someone and it was him. It was Jesse Ventura, and he comes in and he's wearing like these big shoulder pads and like a cape, but he looks crazy, man. He doesn't look like he looks like a science fiction character or something, you know. But yeah, but like he comes in and he's talking about he's like, hey, so I know what you've been through and the stuff that has happened with like Project Phoenix, with Montauk and all this stuff. And he's like, look, I just want to like apologize to you for all of that, that it shouldn't have happened, and it's absolutely terrible that not only that it happened, but it's not being recognized that it happened. You know, it's one thing that it didn't happen, but people aren't even recognizing it or knowing. And he's like, that's going to change. We're changing that. And this had the feel of like there's a lot of like I think meetings on ships, and I'm not sure whose alters what, like who's who, or like when I'm there or whatever, or like in time and space the memories come from, but I know it's me. And you know, because I have these altars and stuff like that. But I have the sense that there's a ship going around that has a small city basically on it, and it's basically like they meet with ET, and they're trying to advocate for humanity and the fact that laws are being broken. You know, like there's a lot of laws that are supposed to protect us from a lot of the things that we're experiencing. Like for instance, consent is supposed to be a really important thing that is across the galaxy, and there are certain laws that certain groups have that they protect consent, but they're kind of turning a blind eye, and maybe they're getting something out of it. Maybe they're corrupt too. I don't know the whole story, but they're turning a blind eye to a lot of this stuff.
I can speak to this.
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
because like you said, Kim Gogan, in part, but especially our friends Penny Bradley and Audrey Walters are speaking to the galactic courts, and the galactic court system is linked to the Galactic Federation. And the Galactic Federation is kind of in a military stalemate with the Draco Reptilian Empire, the vestiges of the Orion Draco Reptilian Empire. And though here on Earth, they're waiting for us to get our shit together. And the white hats that rallied and got Trump, they approached Trump before 2016. Okay, and this is where a lot of people say Q is actually time traveling psyop, but a psyop for our side. Because when you look at the Q drops, it's bringing up stuff the other side has never wanted to see the light of day, and woke up a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I always go by, you should now know them by their fruits, and the fruits in the main have been positive. Okay, so
Yeah, well, a lot of the reaction to it and people that like with that, I think, for instance, there were accounts that were analyzing information and predicting things, and people were acting as if that was the movement when really it was just random people. So that was one way where it got conflated. And then these types of accounts, these Twitter accounts and stuff like that, which a lot of them gained really massive followings, would make predictions of events that wouldn't happen, and therefore
it discredits the rest. It discredits.
Yeah, people would lose confidence in it. Therefore, losing confidence in all of this stuff, bringing kind of like making people like oh, maybe it was crazy after all. Why did I start looking into it? I guess it's all nuts, right? I think that actually did happen to some people.
Right.
But if you really follow the breadcrumbs and don't just follow that, and you also look into the stuff and start connecting your own dots, that's where you can find the truth. You know what I mean? It's always good to not just follow one source of information and have multiple sources.
And we that's what we have. Like here in the movement, in our community, we've got so many people getting access to this information. So like the white hats, they approached Trump pre-2016 election because they needed a popular civilian to beat Hillary get
That
into
makes sense to
office,
me.
and that was just by the skin of it. They apparently they changed the timeline, beat Hillary, and then that enabled Trump to get into office and sign a whole series of executive orders to empower the military and whatever groups to help restore a constitutional republic of the U.S. That's the plan, and that's where all this restored republic stuff has been coming from, or it's related to that. And so then in the time travel programs, you're seeing him in a positive aspect versus a lot of these other world leaders, the royal families. Okay. And so the other thing is the other side, the amount of cheating that they've been trying to do, to me, says it all. Okay. If they're putting all the lamestream media against us, and then it's not about Trump. There's a populist, a clear pro-American sovereignty populist movement in this country that is clearly backing Trump. Okay, the pro you will eat the bugs and buying into their climate change narrative while they fly around in their jumbo jets and they ignore pole shift and
Yeah, they've
other
unfortunately kind
factors.
of taken over the Democratic Party.
So then for me, it's not like, and if this helps everybody, I pretty much voted in 3 presidential elections in my life. 2016, 2020, and this one. Okay, it's not like I'm like, oh, I gotta vote and die in the hard voter. And then the other thing is, yeah, I voted, I made my voice be heard in this one tactic. But then on a larger strategy, we've got the full disclosure movement. We're organizing here every day, putting our money and time and energy, reputations, perhaps our lives. John Whitberg, it looks like they tried to burn his house down, and he'll be talking about that.
Yeah, no, they've done stuff like that to me, and they've been doing stuff like that to a lot of people.
Right.
We'll be talking
Project
about that
Blue,
tomorrow.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so to me, do I feel like I'm a Trump simp for the orange man because I cast my vote for him and against Team Kamala? No, not at all. In fact, given everything that I just reviewed here, I feel pretty darn good with that. I was a Bernie-crat.
I never felt good about the other side, and that's not what I'm saying either. Like, first of all, she was like a prosecutor that threw a lot of people in prison, and I've never been a fan of the prison industrial complex. I could name off a lot of reasons why I don't like her. But the biggest thing recently is just the people who are aligning herself with her the last minute. It's people that we know that are basically part of the group. The people.
It's all the P Diddy. It's all the P Diddy guest list.
P Diddy and friends. Yeah, the P Diddy guest list.
Literally, in recent weeks after the P Diddy scandal is broke, all these people who have been publicly associated with P Diddy are now publicly endorsing Kamala.
Yeah, so I don't know. That just is bad news to me, and I feel like that's like also kind of a brazen move on their part because I feel like more people are maybe more hip to that like than they realize. Like the average person, like people love tea. You know what I mean? Like people love drama. Like so, regardless of the fact that people are usually stupid as fuck and never pay attention to this stuff. Well, this time it's P Diddy. So. And all their celebrities that they love so much. So guess what? They're going to pay attention to this. That doesn't work. That little formula of people will care about stupid shit. Well, what was the stupid shit you were distracting them with? Celebrities and stuff. Well, it's celebrities and stuff that did this. So they're going to care. They're going to pay attention. So I feel like they can't just throw it all away. And I feel like I just feel like they replaced one extremely unlikable candidate, the Democratic Party. They replaced their extremely unlikable candidate with another pretty unlikable candidate, in my opinion. Like, and they kind of keep doing that. And then their argument for me, what I've heard growing up, because I used to vote, and I would usually vote in that direction. And one of the reasons why I'm not doing it anymore is because their whole argument now is, but this guy's worse. But the orange man though, but him.
That's been their argument the whole time.
They're not like, look at the things we did for the country. Yep. Look at all these things we followed.
In Canada, they see that too, huh, Dan?
Look how we're creating policy that's helping everybody. There's very little of that, and more of just but orange man bad. There's more.
There's no plan. There's no like, okay, we're going to spend this much money restoring roads and bridges. That, the other. Like, there's no actual solid data to work with. It's like we got cupcakes and drinks for everybody.
To be fair, with a lot of things, and whether it's, I think it doesn't matter
Band-Aids.
who's coming up with it, they'll come up with some great
Like
idea,
when they give
right?
blood.
Like, you know, we will, the people or whatever, or a politician or something, and then they'll try to implement it, and then one side, they got to decide, so there's two sides, right? One side will like be like, oh no, but that's bad, we can't do that. So like there's just so much stagnancy, and I think that's why I like that quote in the beginning. It's just like, how did we get into the point where there's two different parties which represent two different visions
but
of
arguing,
America?
And one thing that's interesting in that quote, just to put in quickly, like you notice he's not saying that it was always like this. He was saying there was a movement that he calls the Eastern Establishment that came in and co-opted these political parties that did have unique ideologies and expressions of American life, and that now it's being subverted to the point where there is no difference, and the same agenda is always going on one way while creating.
So what I would like to add to that, though, Dan, is yes, in general, pretty much our whole lives up until now, there has been no difference. But like I said, it's kind of like the difference between a Hillary timeline in 2016 and nuclear war, or neutrino bomb war, and no neutrino bomb war. You know, kind of like, and then the fact that they've been trying to steal and assassinate their way to the top. It to me, it's kind of like, this is why it's different. This is why my whole life I never voted for president.
And for me, like
for these last three,
like,
I think it is
the
important. It is different.
I think
we just discussed. I mean, we're seeing
but
this
it's
guy in
important to look
space.
at, like, say the big things, right? Like, like here's a simple thing. You know who they're circulating around as being the Treasury of the Secretary, for example, for Trump? Well, Jamie Dimon. You know what I mean? Like the CEO of like Citibank and that, like one of the most crooked Wall Street people of all time. So like there's some points to like always look at with some of this. It's nice to like have the good things. I do think they'll probably tweak things in a positive way for sure. But there's things like that. Like the big thing that nobody's going to talk about, like if you there's a whole election and not once did they bring up the fact that the Pentagon loses $1 trillion a year that it can't account for. And it's been doing it for 20 years, 25 years, $1 trillion a year, just being gone. Nobody even knows where it goes. But they're going to argue about this funding and that funding and another thing.
And also they're going to argue about
there's these big issues that don't get
like
talked
issues
about,
that don't really affect people. A lot of like, well, they take issues that are like here on the totem pole, maybe, and then they'll elevate them to here, and then don't even talk about the things that are way up here. You know what I mean? Like the things that matter the most. Like they use a whole lot of, hey, look over here, not over here, kind of stuff.
But then when you cite the trillions of dollars being taken, a lot of this is being taken to the secret space programs, and there are right now in our community, I'm seeing this online. There are these channelers who are putting out, like, and I'll call out Bashar by name, who also supports the jabs, who he's putting out the message that if Trump wins, it's a negative timeline. And Kamala, it's like World War III. He's basically saying it's a World War III timeline. And if Kamala wins, it's an ascension timeline. That's what Bashar is saying. Okay. Also, the Galactic Council of 9, according to Pamela Aralyn, okay, who I'm now in disagreement with, they're saying a very similar line. To me, personally, given everything that I know from all this other, what we discussed tonight, and all this other information we haven't gotten to, okay, that flies in the face of my own personal analysis and what I'm seeing. Okay. And, you know, also someone here in our audience pointed out that Tyler Koala of Journey to Truth was also attacked recently, and I saw his posts. If anyone I don't know if either did Tyler ever get to elaborate on what happened to him?
No, he hasn't. But this is another point that I don't trust Elon Musk either. He aligns himself with Elon Musk.
Can I speak to that?
You want to explain that to me?
Because I worked for Tesla for 2 years, full disclosure here, and I drive a Tesla car. Okay, but I personally am very critical of Elon, and we know May Musk has shown herself, I mean, very blatantly in her own modeling sessions to be Illuminati, and there's word that she's an Illuminati priestess. They would travel throughout Africa when Elon was young, to as a family to look for artifacts and things like that. There were occult artifacts, and Arkeem, I know, has seen Elon at the human hunting party, perhaps, at least as one recall that
Yeah,
we
I did.
discussed. So,
And
okay, so
there are
wait,
altars like that.
yes. Okay, so I want to get to that. So,
I did see him there.
so this is where we're talking about how the galactics have to have human levels of human leadership to deal with. My opinion, my analysis on Elon is that he has alters. He himself, right now, like the Elon that I saw at the Fremont factory briefly during a third quarter delivery rush to get out the cars, you know, when I was helping to sell the cars and solar for Tesla, that's not the same Elon that Arkeem saw at a human hunting party. Okay. It's not the same Elon that's talking to Joe Rogan smoking joints. Okay, that Elon is when that Elon talks and he says he's taking us to Mars via conventional rockets, he really means it probably. And then in that, you know, but then we'd say, but doesn't he know about the secret space programs? Sure, probably aspects or
I
alters
kind
of
of
him.
think he's a CIA created by the CIA. That's what I think. I think
Maybe
like half these people are created by the CIA. Like their backstory is halfway fake, maybe halfway real.
the Musk.
I don't know.
Well, there's. I mean,
There's
when you
a
got
way that
time,
you have
World's
to
a
roll
stage
out
and it's
the
all
tech
show, man. Quite
But-
literally.
right?
from decades ago.
But this is my point. This is my point about it being a show. Okay. They can swap Elon out any time. So they could have already swapped him out and we wouldn't even know it right now necessarily. They could have said, we can swap you out. We've got your clones. They could show him his clones ready to go, like his little clone avatar bodies on free dry ice. And they could say, hey, Elon, we know that you've got this history and we're going to help unlock your memories. And you get to make a choice and you get to walk this line with humanity into the future, or you get to get okay and be put on tribunals and then that. And so that's the position I'm coming from. I mean, I want to give the example of Putin. Okay, there's so much love or hate for Putin of Russia. It's very clear. Putin pre 2011 to pre and post 2012, 13, those are two very different men. And his own wife left him. Okay, so I just want to bring this up because when there's a reason why a lot of the people in the truther patriot movement, and I also come from that area as well, say it's a movie. So if I realize that Elon or Trump or Biden or whoever can get swapped out with a body double, and you two of all people should know that that's way possible, okay, then why do I take it personally, Trump or not? Now I'm beginning to look at tactics and strategy, and then how do we get to a new earth and fight these Luciferian bastards? And that's where I'm coming from.
And I want to put in too, when we say it's Trump or Kamala, we're not really saying it's Trump or Kamala. We're saying it's Trump or the backdoor actors that have been operating Biden and people like Kamala. In other words, Clinton and the Obamas. These people are being elected the president. That's who you're voting for. You're not voting for Kamala. Are you kidding? Obviously, she's not. She's a puppet. So, you know, you have to say, well, who is really, like, who has so much skin in the game still? Like Hillary Clinton does.
Yeah.
Especially if
and Obama.
Like, this is Hillary
Obama.
Clinton's way of saying, if I can't be president, if I can't be the first woman president, then I'll control the first woman president. And
That's right.
My proxy. I'll do the Dick Cheney.
Which I worry about.
Obama has said very similar.
Well, while we're on it, you know, the Simpsons, they always predict stuff, and they predict Trump being president, but then they predict, like, I think he gets assassinated, and then there's the first woman president or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's something to watch out.
Well, let's speak to that. Let's speak to that, guys. Matt Groening, the creator and main writer of The Simpsons, is a 33rd degree Freemason. We know that the Freemasons have access to chronovisor technology, whether it's in the bottom of the Vatican or also at Area 51. Okay, and so what it looks like is they use time travel technology. Oh my gosh, you guys are familiar with it, to basically see into the future along different timelines. And then that's why they've been so consistent, literally showing the exact images to a T 10 years beforehand. Okay. And so let's come back around to, like, we were talking about politicians and celebrities that you both may have seen that in the programs that may not have been so nice, Obama. We know that there's testimony from Andrew Basiago and others that Obama has been part of the secret space program to go to Mars via the Ark.
Andrew only has really nice things to say about Obama, though.
Okay, and sure, and that's gentleman that Andrew is great. Now I'm going to ask either of you if either you have any recollection, and do you have anything to say, good, bad, or ugly? What do you have to say?
I know.
I have recollection of him from another reality. In an alternate reality, he's in a rock band. That's what I remember. I think Edward remembered that. He's the lead singer of a rock band in an alternate reality. Because in his reality, there isn't as much of the. They're not as powerful, the dark ones or whatever. So the very little they can do, that's one of the things that maybe they can be allowed to do is to like be in a rock band or whatever and get their little loose energy and all their energy that they need to get that way, because they're consenting and stuff. So it's fine. But yeah, that's the one thing I remember about him, and just get the sense that oh yeah. Also, another thing that's interesting is like his family's connected to a UFO cult from Indonesia. Like, do you guys know about this shit? Have you ever heard about this? No, for real, man. Like, there's like a UFO cult in Indonesia, and like, dude, it's some crazy shit. Like, I wish I had it. That's something that I'll have to do a whole show on or something. But yeah, like, I'm just saying that I wish I had something to pull up. But let me look it up real quick and see.
Yeah, and while you're looking up, Dan, do you have any recall?
I'll tell you. Well, not of Obama, but of Hillary.
Please, this is a favorite topic of mine and many in the truth. Please do spill the dish, tea.
It's a bit embarrassing because it's very personal, but I can personally attest that it was very strange when I was living in Malaysia during the first lockdown. I had a memory of being with Hillary Clinton in like a very luxurious mountain cabin retreat that's very modern looking style at Mount Rainier in Washington. I knew that was the location, and she was talking to me, and it was really weird. I was like, I could tell it was one of my alters. I was witnessing like what the altar is going through, and she's just going on about like how she's going to plan a hike for us that day and all this stuff. Like, I'm her bestie. Like, I'm like her boy toy kind of like bestie friend or whatever, and all of this. And I remember just taking in all the details of the room around me, and then just being like, it's fucking Hillary Clinton. Like, what the hell's going on here? But the altered out part was just like, oh yeah, just taking it all like good and the way I'm supposed to be. And I thought, well, that's really weird. And then a year later, when I was back in Canada, living in Vancouver at the time, I had a memory with Hillary Clinton, and she was, this is very difficult to say, and but so there was me, and then behind me, she was behind me and embracing me, and she was like freaking shape shifting and like literally like harvesting my energy right off of me, like some weird, completely non-human thing. Like, there's no human there. It's not a human.
Yeah, she's not a human being. Yeah,
she's not a human being. It should be evident. Have you ever watched?
Was it reptilian? Was it reptilian?
Yeah, there was. I can't say that it was just. I saw her face, and it was just like it was going back and forth, like.
You know, she's gonna be speaking.
She's just like
speaking here in Portland
energy,
soon.
like light out of me. So.
Hillary Clinton's gonna be speaking here in Portland at some like stadium or some shit soon. I feel like I should protest outside of it or something.
She really is. Like I wouldn't say that if I don't think it's like an actual experience. It was so disturbed from the whole thing. Like I was shaken for days.
Well, Christy Campbell has talked about Hillary Clinton a lot and has a lot of memories of her, and it's very similar kind of stuff. Yeah, it sounds very similar, and I don't think you've ever really talked to each other.
Yeah. Christy's memories of a recall of Hillary is not pretty.
Yeah,
she's not nice. The girls are scared of Hillary, apparently, in the programs. They don't want to be assigned to her.
Yeah, it's and so yeah, so that's something that I really do keep in mind, man. I'll be honest with you, like I've talked a lot of shit about just Trump worshiping and stuff like that, and what I mean by that in general is just worshiping leaders at all. But like when I sit and there's a spot I sit in the river here in the city, and I can see the city life, I can see the train, and I know that in this other reality, like where Hillary did become president, right, and things didn't go this way, that all that life wouldn't be happening. You know what I mean? And like I feel the weight of that. So don't think that I'm not grateful for the fact that people are recognizing that there is this like dark truth.
So then I got to ask you then, Arkeem, the 2016 election then, for all these people like, oh, you're a deep state stooge if you vote. Like, would you have felt bad knowing what we're talking about now, pulling the lever for whoever, anyone but Hillary? I mean, honestly.
No, I don't feel bad. I just feel like it was
like, are you a Trump worshiper?
I feel like it was the people behind the scenes who set it all up, and not people voting. Like I think it's all staged. That's my only thing.
You had me at the world dying in a neutrino bomb, World War III. Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's more complicated than that. I think that they're the people that are behind the scenes, whether they're good or bad. They want a planet to live on and use and harvest financial energy from people on and stuff like that. So it just didn't suit their interests. And that's one of the reasons where people,
that's the whole point of
and that's one of the things that people I think miss the point when I talk about this. And like with Trump too, like his family's time travelers. Like they went back in time to get rich and make money and like have sex with supermodels and stuff. That's why they went back in time, like for real. And like, yes, he's not eating babies. He's not a shape-shifting reptile. Like, but people got to keep that in mind. Like, he's not the guy that people should be like, and then like also just like, whatever happened to like, I'm an American. Like, I remember when we did not like kings or queens, and we didn't look at it that way. And it's like I don't know. I just feel like
you're right, though. It's political dynasties that we see too. We're not electing presidents anymore. When you have groups like the Clintons or the Bushes,
it's like a family.
You're looking at dynasties that they're setting up every time, so they can have rule
what do you think's going to happen
over
with Trump?
decades.
What do you think? And that's all I'm saying. And I'm not trying to be a dick and harp on this. What do you think's going to happen? Ivanka's going to run. If not next time, the time after that, or whatever, or one of his sons, probably Ivanka though, because she's a woman, and they know that will piss off the left, and the right will eat it up too. They'll eat that up.
Well, if I may, after this election, I think things are going to get shaken up, especially in terms of the two-party system. And I don't see us continuing after this set of 4 years to politics as usual. That's kind of, I see this actually as a last hurrah.
Yeah.
That's
Did you
why,
hear that?
Well,
Trump said in a group of people that don't worry, this is the last election you're going to have to vote for.
The book about the book that's about Barron and his time traveling exploits. There's 3 of them, and the last one. Here, I'll bring this up for people to see. The Last President is what it's called. And just a second here. I'm gonna share my screen. Present. Share screen. And then Last President. So there's this book. You can preview it. It's The Last President, and it's about Barron Trump, literally. And
I've never heard of this one. I think there's another book too that talks about Barron Trump. There's 3. Like the time traveling adventures.
It's called The Last President. It talks about Trump Tower. It talks about all this stuff, and it's from 1896. So and there's just I really do think like truth.
Well,
they put the truth in fiction kind of thing.
Who is that? Ingersoll Lockwood? Could you just go back to that for a
second? Yeah, that was one of the books, Ingersoll Lockwood, and then there's like the time traveling adventures of Barron Trump.
It's interesting because on my mom's side we're Ingersolls, so that's why it was sort of like for my attention.
Oh wow, that is interesting.
And then they came over as Huguenots from France and stuff like that.
And that might have been the Cathar Essens or Christed bloodline.
Yeah.
I mean, bloodline.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
why
you got
I
it.
haven't read this.
The
book. I
Merovingian
could read these
line.
books.
Yeah,
Probably
Merovingian.
learn a thing or
Okay.
two.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I was sharing the screen there.
The whole
wasn't.
Charlemagne thing.
No, oh, left the wrong screen. Never mind. I'm screwing up. I
that's
closed the window. Never mind. I don't. But no, that is really interesting. Ingersoll Lockwood. That might mean something. A lot of things that times I'll put these names through anagrams, and I find interesting things sometimes. Time traveler spoke of 5 presidents in 2036. This is the last hurrah for the old system.
And then I wanted to say something else. So here, this is kind of more back to the 3D matrix politics, or just in terms of people showing up as an organizer. Who's I've thrown events before the last year's conference, and I've been an organizer since 2003. Trump, whatever you feel about him, there's a lot of American people who support him. Stadium's full. He'll fill an area out. They'll run out of buses to like bus all the people around to the parking lot area to like the venue and back. And whereas Kamala and Hillary and Biden, they literally could not fill gymnasiums. And the times that they did fill gymnasiums, paid actors literally to come. Or in this most recent fiasco, I believe it was in Texas, they told everyone, oh, Beyonce is rumored to be performing or is said to be performing. And then she comes out, speaks for 4 or 5 minutes, and then nopes out of there. Okay, she's one of the P. Diddy crew, speaking of. And then they put 95 or whatever year old Willie Nelson on stage. And it's kind of hilarious. And it's this stuff that, if you were just to go by support, the fact that these guys have to cheat, they have to ballot stuff, they have to do the mail-in ballot rigging, they have to bring in weaponize undocumented immigrants who they're paying to go to the polls. They've got DNC agents at polling centers. People like Lillian Nova are remote viewing this, and even beyond human DNC operatives. We're literally talking literal reptilian operatives on behalf of these guys. And so this is not your normal Jimmy Carter versus Ronald Reagan election, even if not that was normal. But this is like way beyond that. I had a guy, you're talking about Peanut is a distraction and this and this and that. And then he was saying that it's just red versus blue. You've got George Bush Sr., blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, George Bush Sr. and Republicans going back 20 plus years to like a populist movement behind Trump against Kamala and her, like that team where they're stealing the elections. Totally that's different. Not, you can't distinguish the two. All you see is red and blue. Like, I feel sorry for I just feel bad for people who lack that. They just see things so mushed together.
One of the most criminal families of American history. I mean, they literally did business with the Nazis. They were the Nazis' bankers.
They are. George Scherf.
Right?
Yeah, George Scherf, the Scherf family, and Oliver Sullivan Cromwell law firm of Papa Prescott Bush.
They also and they've buried certain stories, because I remember like things coming out like when George Bush was like president, like in the CIA, and that they were using his oil tankers through his oil company to ship the cocaine from South America into Florida. Everybody knows it.
They were working with the Clintons.
That doesn't get brought up in polite company ever again.
Yeah, and then the Bushes were working with the Clintons to fly coke into Armina air base in Arkansas. So it's am I like, oh, I'm Team Blue because I was a Bernie crat, or at one time
the drugs were the light thing. I just got a big pickup on a lot of human trafficking when you were saying that.
Okay. Oh, are you? So please tell us more about this, Dan.
Yeah, it just came as you said it. I was just like, whoa. I was like, whoa, that's a lot more than drugs that was involved.
Oh yeah. But did you get like a flash or insight or something like that?
It was just an insight. It was just like, whoa.
Or you saw the human trafficking. Okay, right. Okay, exactly. And see, there you go. So, and this is to me where the other side is not omnipotent. Okay, it's kind of like this. They're trying to control the narrative, and then people are getting glimmers of the truth, and then they do their best to whack-a-mole, assassinate, and buy off and discredit the people coming forward. Okay. And then the truth that does come forward, well, they're like, damn, people know that we're doing some sketchy activities with the Bush family in Armenia between the Clintons at the air base. And then what they'll do is they'll try to contain it by find the cocaine narrative. Maybe they'll let that get out,
Right.
but all the
Exactly.
satanic ritual abuse,
about it,
occult, ET stuff, that stuff they're going to pounce on.
If I'm a public relations company that you've hired because you do have some giant scandal, right?
Mhm.
Whatever, then they're going to break it down like that. I don't know if you've ever looked into PR firms, but that's what they do. They show how to identify types of elements, how to pit them against each other. All of these types of things are extremely advanced psychological operations. So they know things like, they know how long news cycles go for, they know how to weight the different stories, how to counter the different stories, how to put in good little hooks that are like obviously fake things that the public will eat up, like urban myths to go into it, and all kinds of things. And they're very good at what they do, right? Because this is how you get like things like Operation Desert Storm were put together by groups like Hill and Knowlton, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were the people who the
PR firms.
They hired the American government hired Hill and Knowlton. They turned around and they created things like that tape about the woman giving the false testimony to the UN, saying that Iraqi soldiers were taking
babies in
incubators and leaving them on the floor to die so they could send the incubators back to Iraq. And meanwhile, the whole thing is a fabrication.
Yeah,
she's the daughter of the U.S. ambassador to Kuwait's daughter, and she's not even a nurse. And she did this whole fake videotape, and George Bush used that as the pretext to do Operation Desert Storm.
Yep,
I mean, we know this is done by these companies, and that's just one story. Yeah.
It's called the Wag the Dog movie, depicts that perfectly. And then Dan, you were brought up through the Mormon space program. There's the Mormon church and the secret space program because of the Freemason ties and the occult, Luciferian deep state. It's all tied together. And I remarked you. I said, "Oh, are you? You're up in Canada. Are you a Utah? You're not a Utah Mormon. You're a Canadian Mormon." And you said the church, they don't distinguish, right? No. And then at the same time, related to that, as an organizer in the medical field, working with doctors, we were fighting against Sutter Health, a so-called nonprofit hospital corporation that's really based out of Salt Lake City, and it's Mormon businesses, and it began as a real estate operation. And they went from real estate into realizing the lucrativeness of nonprofit hospital chains. And then we've testified on these shows before with other people how these hospitals have these links.
The Mormons are the most ruthless capitalists. I swear, like, it's just like they are infamous for being powerful business people. And
well, they're nasty.
Really
it's getting at public hearings in City Hall. They definitely, we go in with like a group of volunteers, well dressed, well presented, and they think that we're one of like the AstroTurf like paid groups to come speak in their favor, and they find out who we are. Especially they knew who I was. So they found out. They're like the fangs would come out, and it got ugly from there. But the PR firms and the PR spin, absolutely. But that programming is breaking down. People are being able to see through it because we're gaining more information, alternative media, people like yourselves are coming out with your testimonies that the other side doesn't like, and that's why they're retaliating so badly against us with this Project Oblivion crap or Operation Oblivion. And so,
but you can really see. I mean, maybe even the only reason that Trump could even have won the election he did was because of social media. They were still working on, we'll control the legacy media, all these legacy institutions. And that's where they still have all of their pull and sway. They don't have it on these platforms as easily. And that's why they had to use the psychological operation we went through to censor information on these platforms for the past few years, because they had to create a culture of censorship because they couldn't have the internet going and saying something that's counter to their legacy media narrative that they want to push. So I think that's really, I really do
there's
believe
an
that it's
aspect
about
of like
the
Reddit.
information.
Like I've talked about this a few times on the show. it came out that like 1/3 of the people on Reddit are they're posting from like this military base in Florida. And then with the bots, the AI bots that they have out there now, it's getting even crazier. It doesn't have to be a physical person doing it. So what they do is they put these fake profiles out there or whatever, these bots, and they're trying to steer the narrative and make it so that we can't like see the truth, and they decide what's true and what's not. Basically, is what they're
Well,
doing.
when you study the military doctrine, like I was going to do my master's degree in looking at changing modes of warfare for the 21st century, and I was doing all this great stuff before they censored stuff on Google and that. And you know, the main thing is understanding it's all about psyop, what they call psyops, right? Like that is key, winning hearts and minds.
Well,
And that might
you've
sound like a
encountered
nice
Michael
thing.
Aquino, right? Colonel Michael Aquino was kind of the real progenitor for the modern era of the psyops, and perhaps you even encountered him. I mean, speaking of psyops, right? And the flat Earth psyop is probably Colonel Aquino's favorite psyop, I bet.
Yeah, and you notice, like what I try to do when rather than look at all the points within that psyop, I start to look at it from the point of view of like analysis. And you can see with like, say, for example, flat Earth tends to attract a lot of people who are still of like a Christian faith, and they're trying to like get into truth, but they need a new radical paradigm. So they're like, oh no, it's actually been a flat Earth all along. And you get like, they're really big into it like that, right? I noticed that there's and so I look at it as segments of the population, like how are they, I'm trying to look at what their big board says. Like, because a lot of time I think, how do they have like business meetings about this type of thing if you were to present it that way? Because that's what they're doing. You know, it's all like we found out during the CV PSYOP that the Canadian military was aggressively into social media. They were totally doing things that were completely illegal. They were doing other operations. Canadian military was doing this weird operation where they're doing wolves going through Nova Scotia. They were putting loudspeakers up and then trying to scare the shit out of the population, thinking that there was an imminent attack of wolves. And they did this like over an area of like hundreds of miles. Okay. Like this is the type of insanity they're doing. We found out that the Privy Council office, for example, which is the true executive organ in Canada that nobody knows about, that's the Queen's Privy Council or the King's Privy Council office. It was the one that was actually behind doing all of the psychological manipulation. They hired all this stuff with what they call nudge theory. It came out of Harvard. The guy in Harvard, he's like this behavioral psychologist, and it's all about how you can manipulate public opinions. This whole new level of doing a feedback. And that same guy ended up working for WHO later. And he was the main consultant for the British Privy Council office and the Canadian Privy Council office in doing their PSYOP against their own populations. So we see again like how it's full circle. This stuff is very relevant. It's not just academic, meaning it's irrelevant. We can see that as very concrete results in our life. So it does relate to you. And that's why it's good that we have a discourse on it, right? Anyhow. You know, Edward Bernays, the man who invented public relations, right? He's the nephew of Sigmund Freud.
Edward Bernays.
Yeah, Edward Bernays is the guy who got women to smoke cigarettes and everything else by calling them freedom torches and
diamond rings. He made blood diamonds a thing.
The
engagement ring.
United Fruit, the whole invasion of Central America for the United Fruit Company. And you know what's interesting? Guess who's running Netflix? Who was like one of the main guys in Netflix, a CEO or a founder of Netflix? Oh, that's right, grandson of Edward Bernays. So you see again, it comes right through, through into your regular reality.
And Freud was a Luciferian too, wasn't he? That whole
yeah, I think there is definitely
and we're seeing this in
like
Netflix.
He was so high on coke. I'm sure he was at least entity possessed after a certain point.
Yeah.
But it is interesting when you look at it that there's really like there's people whose their full-time job is to figure out all of these details and how to manipulate people. Anyway, you know, I think there's in the Adjustment Bureau, there's a great scene where he's like Matt Damon's doing his political speech, and he gets fed up at one point. He's just like, you know what, this is all bullshit, and he starts like trying to be real with people. He's like, you know, it's funny. He's like, how much money did we pay for these different consultants, different things in this campaign? I think we paid what was it, $60,000 to figure out what pair of shoes I'm supposed to wear and exactly how much of a scuff they're supposed to have versus not being too shiny. We paid 60 grand for that, wasn't it? Like, this is what we're really understanding. The level of manipulation is very finely detailed, and it's very valuable.
But what's hilarious is that used to work. That worked from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s into the 10s. But now people have gotten too wise. They've gotten too polished. People are going on TikTok and they're figuring out how scuffed they want their look to be or how shiny they want it to be. And so we're seeing through the political theater, the kabuki.
Like I just got reminded of, remember when George Bush said people question not whether or not I'm a Texan, because he's obviously a Northeast establishment.
He's a blue blood.
Total blue blood. So he goes and he has a PR stunt. This is how you subvert things in politics, right? And he does the thing where he puts on the boots. He's like, I'd like to see somebody say I'm not a Texan wearing these or whatever, and everyone's like, yay, you know, and went along with it. And it's just very, very well constructed. And that's what I think people should just always be critical of, is see that it is a theater. Like there's, whenever they're trying to portray these people normally as human beings, they're not. It's because they're not human beings, right? That's why you've seen these things about like Joe Biden, like with the baby's feet and everything the last week. Have you seen those photos where he's like inhaling baby's feet?
Some of them apparently might be AI or Photoshop, but we've seen plenty of him groping and grabbing. It's
such a thing did happen.
He's done worse.
Like,
we know he does far worse off camera.
Just like it's satire, like good satire can not be fictional,
it's
but
real.
Probably touches on a truth in there. But you know. It's interesting when you look at it this way. Like I remember when, like, I've been involved with the Myanmar politics since I was a student activist when I was 18 about it. And you know, one of the things that was funny is like when the US and all the EU and all this put up sanctions against them in like the 90s or whatever, the first thing they requested was that they could go to a PR firm. And they went to New York and they went to they used a visa so they could go to the PR firm. First thing the PR firm says is, you got to rename yourself from the State Law and Order Restoration Council, SLORC, to the State Peace and Development Council. You know, you got to stop calling them generals and call them like, you know, minister of this and that. And it's just all a PR facelift to things. And that's what these places are good at.
Somebody in the comments is pointing out like the Dalai Lama is a CIA plant.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of stuff about that. And I
can tell you, he's a Luciferian. They do Bon animism, and I know it's going to rock a lot of people, and I'm not against, and I'm not taking a side, free Tibet's with China, blah blah blah, but just my understanding, okay, is before the communists took over China, okay, in Tibet, those monks, you know how you've got very rocky, high mountainous terrain where it's not good to grow crops at all? Pretty much what they got is yak meat and wheatgrass or something like that. Okay, yak meat, yak butter, yak milk, yak this, yak that, yakety yak. And then you've got these gold temples way up in the mountains. How did those temples get built for these monks to sit in all day? They basically had these religious theocracies. So not only are you the king, you're the ruler, priest, king, and you're the incarnation of God on earth. And if you don't deliver enough gold or yak meat or your daughters or your sons, we will whip the flesh off of you. And that is a tradition of the Tibetan order that has ruled that whole time up until the terrible communists, you know, for whatever, came in and did their thing. And so I'm not. It's just I want to give that
The
perspective. So
CCP line is always a peacefully liberated. So we'll
right,
just call it
sure.
peacefully liberated.
And the thing is, it was. I'm going to say it's a shit show under all of them because up until now, it's not just communist or Tibetan monk theocratic rule. We're living. That's just the surface stuff. There's just been this whole Luciferian occult game that those groups are all part of. I mean, like even then, the Chinese CCP, they've been taken over by the Rothschild family, who's Luciferian Illuminati. That's why they're in China. They're pushing all the jab stuff, the 15-minute cities, the smart cities. That's the eating the bugs. That's not CCP. That's straight up WEF. New World Order playbook, guys. And
Well,
you
yeah,
know, so
the CCP was co-opted, obviously,
yes,
along the way. That's why you had the Cultural Revolution. So if there's any time that the CCP was really a disaster, it was when they really threw their weight behind Mao. Because there's a lot of really smart people in China that were part of the CCP. Very, very refined intellectuals and people of very technical means. China had a lot of success in certain points. I lived in Nanjing, which was where the Republic of China capital was. And you look at it back then, like China was very advanced, like incredibly so. So, yeah, you can see that there was obviously a Western infiltration at some point, and it's probably there's a good, like people don't even stand back and ask themselves the question, why would America fund its ideological adversary that Richard Nixon wanted to nuclear bomb, for crying out loud? Why would you give all of your wealth, deindustrialize yourself on purpose, build them up to be the second largest, if not the superpower of the world at your own expense?
Benjamin
Right? If you're
Fulford has an
America
answer.
or Europe or whatever.
Benjamin Fulford has an answer. The post-World War II West, and then knowing what we know, how we're really under the German Fourth Reich and the Martian space Germans. Okay. The West was essentially bankrupted. And according to Benjamin Fulford's sources, the Oriental dragon families had huge stashes of gold, and they basically bailed out the West. And this is where basically China and the United States economically, it's like having our hands on each other's throats. It's like, well, the U.S. is like a military superpower, and China is a military superpower, and the U.S. is a huge economic superpower, and China wasn't as much, but now China is owed all this money by the U.S., and so that over the last decades has shifted the balance of economic power so much to China that if the U.S. failed, yeah,
you know, they like the Rockefellers and them brought the Chinese over to the United States a full year before Nixon even normalized relations with
well,
Mao.
the reason why,
And told them what their plan was, like
yeah,
like the whole plan of globalization, like that there was a total plan for it to begin with. My point isn't that we know that they have no loyalty to nationality or anything else
or ideology other than Luciferian.
And because yes, exactly. So and Luciferian, and we could also call globalization, right? Because globalization and Luciferianism, the total global control network, is its goal, and that's the same with globalization, right? Interdependence. So now I can get stupid, onions from Chile or Argentina in the grocery store. Like it's totally useless, like ridiculous things, but that's the level it's created it. And as you see with Trump, to bring it back into some politics there, Trump says the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariffs. When he's saying this, he's talking about he's going to rebuild economic nationalism, which is what he started to before, right? And that nationalism is the counter to globalization. You're decoupling from it. And you look at Russia, I mean, look how well they've done in the few short years that they've gone and they've nationalized and they've taken care of their own business. And they're doing great. Their economy is like soaring. There's a lot of things. I'm not condoning everything that's happening there or anything by any means, but what I'm saying,
but economic policy make a lot of sense.
It works. And we haven't had an industrial policy in North America for over 30 years. The government's just completely gave up on it,
And in the case of Russia, that nationalization, just the amount of parasitism by the foreign corporations, it's hilarious when they all said over the whole Ukraine war conflict that so many Western countries were going to pull out of Russia and did, and it Russia seems to be much better for it. It made them generate their own product lines to fill in the vacuum of the Western substandard garbage that was overpriced anyway. You know, and getting
So it's
past the
easy.
whole,
Like, it's not difficult to replace IKEA with your Russian version of IKEA, you know, and
Exactly.
things like this. Like, it's not like IKEA is so special. You know, it's all particle board that's painted in bright colors, for crying
right.
out loud.
And to replace McDonald's, they're doing themselves a favor, you know, and to get rid of all the GMO crap. That's only going to help their population.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think things like that are important. Like, we should be focused. Like, if we really are environmentalists, why would we be doing something where you're shipping things back and forth on oil tankers all across the world? Why wouldn't you be having things closer to your home? Like, how are these climate people supporting globalization?
It does make sense. It does, though. It makes perfect sense. They're loser-farians. They're trying to wreck the world. Yeah. It doesn't make sense to people like us because, Arkeem, you care about the world very much.
Ideologically,
well, I think to a certain extent, like, you know, if I want to buy like a guitar from England or whatever, I should be allowed to do that. But I think it comes to a point where we get a little crazy, where he's like saying, yeah, like, why are we buying these onions from Chile or whatever when we can grow them here? Like, I remember this one guy asked, like, I remember this guy getting in an argument with me about one time about him. He wanted to return these fruits, these oranges, because they came from Argentina or something. He's like, why the hell are these from Argentina? And I was like, dude, don't give these people trouble because the fruit's from Argentina. And he's like, no, it just makes me mad. I didn't realize until I wouldn't have bought it if I would have known. He's like, they grow these like here in California and in Florida and stuff. Like, why the hell is it coming from? And so, yeah, it does make sense. I didn't know it was an American. Like, I learned this recently. Like, in Italy, country, like, you wait. Certain fruits are in season. You wait for them all year, and then it's this great thing. And you don't always have access to everything. That's just how it is, and that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. And so I don't think like it's good for us to be xenophobic, but I do think that we do need to examine the environmental impact of like making globalizing everything, like making everything on a global scale and selling everything everywhere. I think that has a lot of.
You can still have trade. It's just like, but maybe we shouldn't be taking all these industries that we crafted in our own countries. Say, for example, Doc Martens, anything, British company, all these things, Burberry. It's all being manufactured in Vietnam and Bangladesh and everything now. Like, that's a problem. Right, that's the part we're talking about.
And then it feels,
that you couldn't buy a product from other countries.
It feels slave labor and
exactly
sweatshops, and just it's not good for anybody. I mean, it gives us cheap prices, but at the expense of what? Not being able to. No one can afford to live anymore. So
they did that. They did that on purpose, as they cut back on industrial, real high wage paying unionized jobs in the 80s after the destruction of labor. What they did was they said, oh, we'll just have the service economy. Okay, well, yeah, you're not making as much money as you were before, but you got Walmart now. Things are cheaper. You can buy a TV cheaper than you could in the 80s. Like, certain things, the only things that you notice actually got cheaper were televisions, fucking drugs. All this shit were the things that, you know, the weapons used against us got cheaper. Everything else, basic good food, quality clothing, things that don't fall apart, that all got extremely expensive. Basic housing.
Food is a really big one. It's really big one.
Well, let's bring the full disclosure movement ascension perspective in all this. Okay, this is now, because we're all recognizing this on the same page of the problem, we're now all in the collective stage of developing the solutions. And then after that, it's going to be the collective stage of implementing those solutions to replace the old structures. Right now, we got people in our community like Randy Ubel. You know, I'll give a shout out to our friends. You know, she just joined a clothing company where they do like lines of people like outdoor and hunting clothing, where it's like, but like sustainable, eco-friendly, high vibration fabrics.
Nice.
Okay, there are people in our community. So now we can have like, my understanding is that in the new earth economy, it's going to be not these giant corporations. It's going to be much more everyone is in business for themselves or as parts of collectives or cooperatives doing boutique.
Which is actually a lot
Yep.
easier than people think. And I can testify to the fact that, you know, I've been on some other planets, you guys. I've lived entire lifetimes on other worlds. Some of them a lot worse than our planet. Some of them a lot better than our planet. But the things that I liked about planets, even some of them were maybe in some ways they're worse, or in some ways they're better, whatever. That's objective sometimes. But the thing that I miss a lot about breakaway planets is like there was a sense of culture of where you were from. So you cared about where you were from. There was a sense of identity, and there was a sense of like, not only that, like extracurricular activities and doing stuff with people, extremely valued. And like not only that, everybody's job matters and they're respected for it. And there's a job for everything. Like they've got, you know, the towel guy in the bathroom, and they've got, you know, they kind of sometimes even sort of have jobs that exist that maybe aren't not 100% necessary, but it sure is nice that they do exist. And they create this economy where like everybody is contributing something like on a direct level. And yeah, like if you outsource it to somewhere else, so some people in a boardroom that want more money so they can buy yachts, like, you know what I mean? Like if that's how you're approaching it, well then that's going to end up hurting your economy, obviously. But if it's the people that are actually, I don't know, it's
things designed to fall apart. You know, this is the problem. We have had since the 1920s what we call designed obsolescence, right? They realized we were so efficient at producing, even by the 1920s, that the problem of capitalism wasn't that we couldn't produce, which was our historical problem. The problem was we produced so much we couldn't consume it at the rate that it was being produced. So they brought in the idea, well, let's design things to fall apart. Let's design things that are inferior. That way people have to buy it more often. And this really starts to take off. And if you think about the environmental impact, how many resources we've wasted, how much human labor we've wasted rebuilding things that we don't even need to in the first place. I think you're right. Like being able to take some pride in what you craft and doing something of good quality in a small community, that counts for a lot. And we waste a lot of our lives paying for this crap that falls apart.
Dan, let me ask you a question, because we've got, and I wanted, this also applies to Archeem as well. You know, and I know that on a lot of these planets in the breakaway, it seems like there might be like SSP. So I don't know how natural and organic those economies are. But are there any, like on these breakaway colonies or planets, are people like more in business for themselves, working cooperatively, or are they, because it's a SSP and it's still messed up out there, just like it's messed up down here, it's rigid? What does it look like up there?
Good question. Archeem has a lot better access to his memories on some of those things. My first impression is, at least from what I do remember with Mars, was I was doing it in military capacity. So, you know, it was more like things were provided for you. You know, I think with Mars, it's a lot more militaristic. So there's a centralized formal logistics system that does things. I think you get a little bit of this like kibbutz kind of ideas. Like
there's no homegrown economy. Like, there's no homegrown economy of people and they're owning their own businesses, running out of their homes, because that's Mars.
Yeah.
But exactly. Okay.
But I think in other places for sure, I can not only see that, but it's just even like, it's not even like it has to be like you have businesses. It's because like when people's basic needs are taken care of so easily, then the society becomes more about it's like
evolution.
You like Archeem, like he's an artist, right? Like he wants to do his art. That's who his identity is. And that's who he's known in the community. Or
Dan, instead of the theoretical stuff, right? Archeem, I mean, can describe Edward Hughes is a soul fragment or soul, I don't know, brother or somehow alter. Okay, from Earth on another positive timeline, from 2028, 4 years ahead of us.
Yeah.
And in his economy, everyone's dressed sharp. The economy is much better. It's much more organic. People, I mean, what could Edward tell us about that? Like how people
Cool.
make a
Yeah.
living, quote unquote. Or do they even have to make a living?
I just think in his reality, it was kind of like these breakaway planets that have things more figured out. Where like, you know, I'm not really connected with him right now, but from what I recall, it was just like more. Well, for one thing, okay, here's one thing I can tell you is he goes on and on about how we built our whole reality about cars a lot, and it's one of the things that really blows his mind.
You're
Well,
what?
one of
Oh, the cars. Yeah. I love
like
how you bring up that stuff.
yeah, for him, he thinks it's
Yeah.
crazy because he.
It
So
is.
and here's the thing is
I
like
have a problem with that. That's my big beef in life.
yeah, and so one of the things that in his reality is because the cities are built around human life and people instead of cars, where you're like afraid to send your 8-year-old outside because they're gonna get hit by a fucking car if you know if they're not looking, because people are idiots. Like, you know, the cities in his reality, the people are hanging out outside more. They're doing stuff. They're walking around more. That means they're spending more money on stuff. They're buying a coffee from whatever the place they walk past, or buying they see that street vendor that's they got freshly baked donuts or whatever it is, and oh okay, you know what I mean. If you're out in the world, you spend more money, and you know, we might spend money sitting on our ass ordering stuff off the internet, but who are we ordering it from? We're ordering it from Amazon, this giant corporation. It's not benefiting society. It's not.
That's what I loved about living in Asia. I mean, you always have excuses you can go out to eat, you can go out to do this. There's night markets, there's this. You're always just going out and interacting.
Yeah, and I've never experienced that as an American. We're completely deprived of that. Like,
yeah, the night markets in Asia are pretty cool. I'll say that.
Even in a city like Portland, where Portland is supposed to be like Mr. Bike friendly city, like or whatever, it's fucking horse shit, dude. It's like completely built around cars. There's like maybe one or there's not nearly enough places where there aren't cars and people can just walk around.
But guys, go back to breakaways, because we're all familiar with like how much this earth sucks with traffic, guys. But wait, real quick. We're talking with Arkeem and Edward, or Edward via Arkeem. Yeah. Okay, it's kind of it's almost like it's an irony, because the New World Order, they've taken that vision that can be properly manifested, where you got clean energy and bicycles and not so much cars running people over, and much more walkable cities. And they've perverted that vision and tried to impose this whole smart city or 15-minute city thing on us,
which they do with everything.
Right. And so to people listening,
like the women's rights movement, for instance.
Yeah, right? They co-opted. They co-opted
that, and now women and men have to work.
They actually, the Rockefellers actually created they didn't even co-opt the women's rights movement. They created it whole hog.
I knew a little bit about that. Like
they admitted it too. But the whole thing is I just want people in our audience to not just hear Arkeem talking about like these walkable cities in here and think, it's like this is a 15-minute city dystopia. Right. I want to say that it's what we're getting here in our distorted timeline, or heavily edited timeline. They're giving us a distorted vision of what Arkeem and others have gotten to see and experience in more positive timelines.
Most definitely. Even this timeline is a very degraded timeline, like compared to other octaves. Like I've been in different versions of different places on Earth, and it's working on a different vibrational level. Like it's completely different. It's the same city, like Seoul or whatever, but it's one that's maybe something far in the future or whatever, but it's completely different, and it's almost like angelic. It's heavenly. You can go into certain like aspects of these places. Vientiane, I've gone to Vientiane in Laos, the capital, in a more like I would call these like positive alchemized. Like these are different like octaves and different expressions of these same places, and some of them are really beautiful, and some of them
Dan,
are like shadow versions of this.
Was this
of
dream?
This
Did you go? Did you go to these realities? Do dreams or visions, or were these part of missions? Because like when I've asked Arkeem and he's talked about seeing positive timelines, he makes a distinction that he didn't just dream it or have or astral project there. He actually went through a portal and existed in those timelines. And so then when you went to Vientiane, for example, in that positive higher timeline, can you recall the circumstances of that?
No, it was just this very lucid recall, and I knew it wasn't simply a dream, because I was like, well, but this is Vientiane, but it completely, it's like the most, it's very hard to describe. It's like if you had a low resolution picture and then you had an extremely and low, like bad color and everything else, and then you put it into some extreme high resolution, rich color, kind of glossy version. Completely different. Like it is the same, but it's different. So I just think, like with these things, it's weird because even when we talk about time, like past, present, future, they're just all they're all simultaneous moments of a now, right? Like everything. It's very weird how these things work. Like even when we talk about, people went back in time.
Right, time doesn't exist.
But people are
when we say
constantly
time doesn't exist, it's not just a cliche. They can go. It's being manipulated. We perceive it, but if we're really to say time doesn't exist and we're really to understand it and mean it, then it's like what you're saying is going back and forth. But it sounds like you're not just speaking about different times by going to different. It's almost like there's a different dimensionality. So it's like maybe they appear more vivid.
Realities for the same one.
And so can seem like colors maybe seem more vivid in a different timeline, or it might be a higher vibrating timeline.
It's different. Like it's composed differently. The buildings, the parks, the greenery, everything's different. But it's still, you can tell it's the same. It has even some of the same contours or the same. So it's very hard to explain how it works, except to just sort of be in it and be like, wow, why am I here? But the same simultaneously, there's like the shadow versions that are more dark.
Like the Tales from the Dark Side version, where it's all like in a photo
and
negative.
A lot of the SSP mission stuff that I remember was going through the dark shadow versions of these same places, like Hong Kong, et cetera, et cetera. I remember the shadow versions of them as well. Yeah, and that's where, and it's annoying because it's like it has the whole complexity of the city still. So like one of the things I always remember from like different SSP things in these other dimensional realities is, and that's how I look at it. Like people talk about it in a lot of terms, but I just look at it as different dimensional reality hopping. But having to do things like get to your bus and things like, there's really weird things, like you just have like these mundane things that you have to do, and it's like, okay, I got to do the mission, I got so many hours to do this, and you're planning everything out and trying to build your logistics plan for it, and just the stress of having to go through that. I recall a lot of that. But yeah, there's definitely these shadow versions. I know like there's these hangouts, there's like these safe houses and stuff that you go to in these different shadow versions, where you definitely, you're meeting with other people, they're giving you mission briefs and that. There's like these recreation types of places too for people who are in programs when they're in these shadow realities. It's sort of like a burlesque house type of thing, but it's also like this bohemian art vibe and other things. Very strange buildings. And I know I repeatedly go back to these certain places. I'll be like, oh, I know this place, I know how to get around here. I don't know, it's there's a lot to it. There's a great show where they talk, and I think even like there's different realities. I think sometimes I'm wondering too, rather than just some of this, like these are like alternate versions of Earth and that as well, that we are doing these missions. I think there's a lot, like Stephen Popiotech talks about Trinicon. I think one of them that I do visit is Trinicon. It's a very, it's a time, it's sort of like a timeline where things went bad, and it's really like, it's a dark shadow over it. And then there's the ones that are quite different. But I think with a lot of the SSP stuff works within the dark timelines. And I think they know that there's a certain relationship about what happens there manifests in this timeline. So I think they try to manipulate our present timelines by going back into some of these other.
Yeah, Amir.
And there's tech transfer. There's all kinds of things that happen between the timelines.
Amir told me that that's a lot of what was going on with me for a while there. When they're attacking me and all these things were happening to me, is I guess I'm tethered to versions of me and other realities and stuff like that. Where some of them I'm still working on Montauk and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I know through doing like my TQH stuff that I even do on myself when I'm doing clearings, like there's so much that's related to stuff that's going on in other timelines and that with you. And sometimes you have to like heal some stuff because sometimes they'll be like, why is this hitting me out of nowhere? Like, what is this? You might think it's some kind of psychotronic weapon, but in reality, sometimes it can be something simple, like well, not simple, but it's actually something happening from
it's
another
not me. I was
timeline.
going to ask. I was wondering if it was you, Arkeem. But I see you when you're muted, and when Dan's muted, there's still that typing noise in the background, and I don't know what that's coming from.
Let me mute and see if it goes.
And then the other thing is, I wanted to say Shannon Martin saying that's where women's lib came from. Goofy shit. You should really research this. In the during Vietnam War, when they had, especially after World War II, there's a shortage of working men staying behind, and then you had the Vietnam going to Cambodia and Laos, and the Rockefellers, who are part of controlling the secret government and the economy, realized that economically this is a problem when your main workforce is going off to fight and get blown up and is demoralized. So they said, let's do the women's lib movement, which actually broke up the family. It was not a benefit to humanity, where it says to women, yeah, you can go and wear a man suit too. Don't worry about raising your kids. Okay, this was part of their whole plan to destroy the nuclear family. This is all very well researched, and I didn't make it up. So, please, before you come here saying anything is goofy shit, educate yourself. Thank you.
It's very true. And you'll see that there's a relationship with war and families being reorganized. So we caught the term nuclear family comes from like post World War II setup, right? But prior to World War II, the family still had a lot of extended family living with people. Actually, before World War II, the United States and Canada, there was also, just like we have now, a housing crisis. It was extremely expensive. So you had a lot of intergenerational living in the same home. But every phase, every war is shifting and then changing the property market. And that's when they come back from World War II, they create the mortgage system for North Americans so people could have what they call wartime housing that they quickly constructed. But that changed the family unit size. They controlled like the type of housing and the financing so that suddenly you didn't have intergenerational families living together in that. So there's always these revolutions in the family.
Exactly.
They
killed the village model.
The family as well.
It was a village model. It takes a village to raise a child, and they knew to kill the village model and turn it into the nuclear family model. By doing that, they eliminated grandma and grandpa. Now you eliminated caretaking.
Aunties and uncles too, right?
And aunties and uncles. So you now eliminated caretaking for the children growing up. So mom or dad can be free to work, but mostly dad in a traditional village model. Mm-hmm. And then now there's no one to care for grandma and grandpa. Now you've got your nursing home industry.
I also think it's important to bring up.
You have to create a pension system.
I think it's important to bring up like women couldn't even open up a credit card without a male cosigner like 50 years ago, and that we're not saying that was a good thing. That wasn't a good
I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I'm just saying that the whole quote unquote branded women's liberation movement, burn your bra, that's Edward Bernays Freud psyop 101. And to say,
I think women had legitimate, like they had some really legitimate things, like the women who fought to be in, let's say, medical school and everything else. Like that was the real.
Yeah, I think there's a lot
grassroots live women live, and I think there was something real, but it gets co-opted very quickly, right? And
they can do that with anything. They can do that with
it's very easy.
What people need to understand is these intelligence agencies are really good at finding ins. And a really good way to get into the public psyche and manipulate people is find something that they'll latch on to, where people are like, oh yeah, of course, I agree with that. And then they'll go, you know what I mean? And then they'll use that in a way to manipulate people. And that's the easiest way for them to do it.
They take a progressive populist movement and then they co-opt it with a liberal loser-farian agenda. And it starts out, it's a Disneyfication of looking at something wholesome and desirable, and then they morph it down the road. And so
And also,
Because if we bring it
COINTELPRO is
back
famous. COINTELPRO is famous for taking genuine movements,
yes,
creating infighting between the people, then creating like a fake
they created
astroturf narrative.
racist coloring books. The FBI went to the work of creating racist coloring books and then saying that the Black Panthers were distributing these to people when it was actually stuff that the FBI created. Like they went
oh
down to
yeah,
that
yeah,
level of
COINTELPRO did that. Yeah. They
Yeah.
got shooting wars going between different chapters of the Black Panthers eventually. But first it was like the Black Panthers versus the Blackstone Rangers in Chicago. And they would send letters from one leader to the other saying, I'm going to get you, we're going to get you, and then do it otherwise. And then they watch them kill each other. And they would also throw in informants and saboteurs to stir the fire.
You have basically like Luciferian, like there's different names we can give these people, but another name that some people know it by is the Brotherhood of the Snake. And this is what we're talking about as well, right? Like in the end, it's very interesting because we can see that the trauma and the fractal and the repetition of the trauma through what this really reenacting a lot of this, like when we have grassroots movements, what we are trying to do is rebel for basic human dignity, right? And that was something that goes back to our ancient past because humans fought against these brotherhoods, these other beings, and had a rebellion, and then they crushed it, right? And this is what they celebrate over and over again, the cynicism that the humans can really manage their own affairs. We need to manage it for you. And it's interesting, like, you know, like it goes in with like with Pierre Sabak, he shows with like the ophis and ophis. This all relates to a snake. Ophis is the Greek word for, all of this stuff goes back to office is related to ophis. It means the snake. So it's always like, it's interesting that there's the
Noise? It's driving me
bureaucracy.
nuts. What is that?
Here, let me make sure I'm not doing something. Take this off. Is that going to make a
I
difference?
think that's probably it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
already don't.
Sorry
hear.
about that.
Yeah, there.
Anyhow,
That's much.
I
Better.
just wanted to bring that in because it's interesting how it ties back to this, like what we're really talking about, and that's where the Trump thing is interesting, right? Because in a way, it's the human rebellion against this Brotherhood of the Snake, a New World Order, globalization kind of agenda thing, right?
Well, that's because of Brotherhood of the Snake, and that's reptilian and Anunnaki type control and demonic control. It goes, as far back, 26,000 years in this cycle, Babylonian money system, from here to ancient Rome, to ancient Egypt, to Babylon, and then before that was Atlantis and Lemuria, and going back to Mars and Tiamat then. Yeah, so that's your 250,000 year cycle that we're rounding the corner on, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it is important to see that it, especially I'm looking at a lot of the stuff like the ancient history nowadays, especially the archaeology, and it's fascinating to see it's the same story going on all the time, like when you look at the motifs being used. So yeah, and it really has to come down to like, we're gonna like to root out and create the new earth, like just for, I know that was what you wanted to look at, the positive side. I think we're already creating it. I think people are starting to have the standards of what they want for like good living, and we're talking about some of that. Sorry, I lost my point, so I'll just give up the floor. I'll come back to it.
All right, but it's along New Earth, and I love that. I love when we're talking about this discussion of getting it more on the New Earth and the disclosure and the ascension, and getting past the 3D matrix stuff.
That's what I'm planning already.
Offer.
Totally. Like I think what's exciting is like, it's like you're saying, like the community-based things, people being close. I think we're gonna want to probably try to live in smaller numbers and live closer to the land is going to be part of the new earth, and there'll be a lot of things to it. But I think we'll realize that we're much happier having a lot of time and freedom rather than a lot of stuff. And I think we'll figure out how to be comfortable and convenient through it as well.
Yeah, that is kind of what I think too, but I disagree that we're gonna have to all live totally far apart. I think that we have to live among each other. Like, I don't know.
I think it'll be experimental as we come back and we decide, like, we're going to have to figure out how to,
we have to live close.
We want to redesign cities and make things more livable, right?
You can't live in the like giant concrete cities where we are separated from nature like we have it now.
Yeah.
But we can't have cities that are way different to where there's like trees everywhere and forest, and we don't have
I want domes.
populated like
I live in Canada. It's too cold most of the year. I want big domes so we can live like, like a Mediterranean climate for a good part of the year. I think that would be amazing. Like, I think we should really we can bring back some of that Mars knowledge and really apply it. I mean, there's so much abundance in this world is the main thing to understand. And when you see that the economic system that we have with scarcity is designed around, it's just all reptilian money, magic, black voodoo nonsense, right?
On
It
its
doesn't
way
cost, yeah, it doesn't cost that much money to make a house. It doesn't cost that much money or effort to do all.
And we're going
these
to build
things.
earth ships, like you're saying, dome houses, like with spraycrete called Epicrete, where it's bug
Yep.
resistant, mold resistant,
also
waterproof,
like growing
bulletproof.
food among each other isn't as crazy hard as they try to make it
Right.
out to be either.
Hey,
I have
Arky,
a friend
can
who
I
has
share
a
my
garden.
screen,
It's
Arky?
not that big. He's got these raised flower beds. It's constantly producing food. He's like, he gives it away constantly. I say, Sheldon, you better watch out. They're going to come after you. You're giving away free food. You're showing that abundance is easy.
Right,
they're going to get angry with people doing stuff like that. Right?
Yeah, that's because they're trying to get us into that draconian mindset. Arky, can I share my screen briefly? I want to pull up kind of like updates since we're on the election night topic here.
Oh yeah.
Good.
Okay. Here we are. This is on CBS News. Okay, so this is a Illuminati news site, obviously, but let's they're doing the coverage, and so live 2024 election results map shows early battleground state vote counts for Trump-Harris race, and this was updated 2 minutes ago. This is exit polling. Now, guys, I want to point this out, though. Okay, these are exit polls, and exit polls are being eliminated to a large extent historically when they used to be so much more common. And it's very commonly known, or at least by like the League of Pissed Off Voters and groups like that, that exit polls in general reflect the reality of how people voted to it's like a 3% margin, okay, at least within 5%. And what we're finding and this is irregularities, especially like 2016 and 2020, where there's been from the side of the Democrats, I'll just name it, so much election theft and shenanigans that they've been trying to eliminate the exit polls. And when they did at least have people doing their own informal exit polls and compared it to the numbers, they were like way off, way past 5% margin of error. And it's always in favor of, Team Blue. Okay. So the reason why I'm pointing that out is because here we've got.
Scroll down because I want to see which states haven't voted yet because they may have a lot of seats left.
Okay, so we would expect these California 3 states to go blue. Yeah, these will go blue, and then these are supposed to go blue, but the center of the country is supposed to go mostly red. And then Pennsylvania, that's the state where there's been a lot of shenanigans of ballots showing up, being at stuffed ballot boxes, people showing up with pallets of like ready to go. Pre-filled out ballots, like with like that are very sketchy. They have funny names.
I'm getting a hit that Arizona is more of the one to watch out this time. I think they're smart, knowing that they're going to be ready to contest Pennsylvania in that. But I think Arizona may be a good area they're going to manipulate. I think they're pretty stealth. They're going to do everything to, like they've obviously, like you said, they cheat through the whole thing. So I think that's one to look at.
And Lily Nova, our good friend Lily in the community, has done at least one, if not two, remote viewing sessions on the polling centers in Arizona, at least. And her report is she was shown by her galactic friends reptilian agents in the polling center changing votes from blue to red. And this is her data, and I'm going to quote her data. I'm in agreement with the information that Lily has been sharing with the community.
That's interesting. I didn't know that, but yeah, I believe that. So I got that really strong off of it. Yeah. Well,
I don't know what to think. I mean, I've noticed that there's fucking so much interference, like all over the place. Like burning ballot boxes here, and I don't really pay attention to the election, so that's why. Like you're saying all this stuff, I literally don't pay attention anymore. I wish I had some more to offer on like what I know about it or whatever. Like I just don't pay attention to the elections anymore. I don't care. I really wish that just whatever happens, people don't freak out, I guess. And I'm kind of worried about that, to be honest with you, because like there are going to be people who are probably going to lose their shit if Trump wins. But also, it could have been the same thing the other way around. So who fucking knows? But
I think there'll be a lot of Soros expressed dissatisfaction. I think you'll have a lot of that kind of stuff.
AstroTurf.
Just
It's
like
called
the BLM,
AstroTurf.
my plan
the
is
stacks of
just-
bricks in cities. We had that
Yes.
in Canada too.
Yeah,
By
well,
the way.
all
That
of
kind of
downtown
stuff, I
Portland's
think.
Yes.
boarded up right now. It's completely boarded
Which
up.
is
A lot of
Luciferian.
businesses aren't like open, and people are already bracing for people to freak out. And I've lived fairly close to downtown. I don't live right downtown, but my plan is to just kind of chill. I think I'm gonna go out tonight and kind of look around a little bit, but then I'm just gonna avoid the energy of panic
Mhm.
or whatever
Good.
that they want people to tap into, because I'm not really about it. Like, and I don't know. I just the one thing that I'm really tired of, and the kind of the message that I wanted to put out with this is, people are very divided right now, and I just think it's so stupid. Like we really need to come together, like, and we really need to just care. And one thing too is I think we need to like kind of care about like our country. Like we can't.
Should.
We're figuring out like we're it's so annoying. Like one of the big issues with this right now is they're sending, and this is where I'm like, well, I'm not even gonna vote. This is one of the reasons. It's one of the key issues for me is like Gaza and how they're sending millions of dollars over there to just like bomb people and like kill people and bomb hospitals and shit. And neither candidate really said like condemned it enough for me. That's one of the reasons why I don't care about voting is like I feel like if honestly, and this is just coming from me, I feel like if Trump was really such a good guy, he wouldn't support Netanyahu or however the fuck you say his name in Israel. He thinks that they deserve more resources and more power and shit, is what he said. And there's just a lot of stuff that I disagree with. But on the surface level, okay, I do agree that the Kamala team is being backed by people who are literally part of satanic groups and stuff like that. And that is a huge red flag to me. And it's one of those things where, well, we have a mutual enemy, I guess, and I'll just leave it at that. We have a mutual enemy, so in this instance, I don't really care, but like I understand where people are coming from and why they are deciding the way they are and looking at things the way they are. And I do think that I don't know. I don't know how. I don't claim to be like a political expert or anything like that. I just want what's best, and I want people to just realize that a big part of this isn't just like, okay, now Trump's in office, all right, cool, or whoever, Kamala, if that's who you voted for and that's who you wanted, right? No, we have to figure out as a country how the fuck to get out of this and stop fucking hating each other and not getting along. And whoever is elected, I hope they like, which I'm pretty sure. Let's be honest. We saw the polls. It's probably going to be Donald Trump. So I hope that he just does attempts to, if he does get elected again, to not be polarizing and just be like, look, we need to get on the same page, guys. Let's fucking do this. And hopefully, with the Diddy stuff and taking down all these fucking, if that actually does happen before everybody's eyes, they'll be able to understand, the American people and the world will have better context as to what the fuck was going on behind the scenes, why people were looking at things the way they were, and etc. I want to,
and that's a nice step to the reality of moving towards disclosure, right? Because the bigger steps
That's right.
come out.
That's
until
our
we do these
movement.
baby steps, and that's the movement. It's making it a little bit easier. We're starting to get used to like really traumatic things, and people are like, oh yeah, and people aren't surprised anymore. Like whereas before it would elicit massive shock, and that's in some ways a good thing. And I think that's And it's interesting because I don't think they can reveal too much of their game plan if they do have one.
Yeah.
My sort of defense of some of these politicians is understanding they're not supreme powers. That's why you have Mossad and that has control files on everyone. That's why every single politician can't even ascend to the offices of power without being compromised on some kind of videotape or anything else that they can use as blackmail against them.
That's another thing that I'm worried about too. That's another thing I'm worried about, honestly, like being real, because like we're trying to present like all sides of this here. There's been some damning information when it comes out with Epstein and Trump and stuff like that came out. And if he really is this like guy who's like such a champion, well, let's just hope that they don't have any that those people don't have the dirt on him that I'm worried that they do, because like that's the whole reason why that guy was hanging out with people, is trying to get dirt on people.
Right.
And
but I think everybody at one point or another had to rub shoulders with him.
If you guys listen to these new tapes that came out where Jeffrey Epstein is talking about Trump, he's really two-faced. In some of the tapes, he's like, "Oh yeah, we're best friends. We're best friends," and then in the same breath, he's like, "I fucking hated the guy," like, and all this stuff. So it's really interesting to listen to. People got to make up their own minds about it. But it reveals a lot of damning information just about Jeffrey Epstein and the way he operated, really. Like, and the fact that they were close and they were talking a lot longer than people realize. And that's what I'm saying when I'm like, look, I get where you guys are coming from, and I hope you're right. But at the same time, I kind of think the CIA just controls everything. I kind of think it's all just a show. That's just where I'm coming from. But I hope for the best, and I hope you guys are right. And when it comes down to it, if there is a like I don't want like the people who like I don't want team like Oprah Winfrey, P. Diddy to win. Like I want these people to go down. So, but I'm just saying I don't really support anyone. That's all. And
let's hope that something as simple as the nation detoxing from these horrible foods is going to lead to a cleanse that could help people maybe actually even intellectually process things and feel good. Like I think America could literally feel good by their bodies being healthy, like banning some of these.
And you know that they're actually addressing that. They're actually addressing that. You know, like RFK is his whole.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like
he's talking about that, and then crickets from the left. Like, so there's just imagine
if America's obesity problem could be reduced. Right, and just how much that could impact and help people.
So let's do the movement perspective here. Okay, the movement perspective, it transcends the 3D matrix level of thinking, and it'll look like this. If Kamala wins, from the movement perspective, we would, in my opinion, I would say advise us, you know, as a whole, and I as an individual within the movement, would pursue the route of unveiling all the election theft and effery behind the Team Blue winning an election that they have no right to win. I mean, and not by popular numbers, if you're going to go by that. And we push the advance and disclosure movement along that line. Trump wins. Okay, what we do is we are emboldened in the positive, and then we try to make the most with efforts of, like, say, RFK getting into some health czar type position. We push for disclosure as much as we can for the SSP and the Space Force and all that. And we approach it from a movement perspective of how can the movement gain depending on either candidate.
Well, some simple ones I see right away is if we could get the censorship removed, right? Like what would be nice is like Mark Zuckerberg tried to sort of get on his knees and sort of apologize to Trump for being such a jerk and, you know, creating censorship on an unprecedented
because the military behind the scenes may be arresting people is what some of the chatter.
Well, I think that he's also like, that's what I'm saying. He was created by the CIA. Like Mark Zuckerberg was like all these fucking people. That's
Steve Jobs, all of them. I totally agree. I agree.
All a show. I just don't get it.
Look, like, it's a movie. It's a movie, but again, we know and you know that the 2016 Hillary timelines are bad.
Yeah.
Okay. We have enough skin in the game that we know that. And that most people do not know that information. So I think that knowing that information, it's kind of like we know a lot more than your average bear. It kind of behooves us not only to share this information with other people, but I don't know, to try to give them the most nuanced, clinically correct understanding of the situation so that they themselves can take their own action, but from a very informed standpoint that we offer. You're not going to get this on CBS News.
Remember the 5th of November, guys.
Yes, because that was when Guy Fawkes wanted to take out British Parliament, which was overrun by parasitic reptilians, and then they wanted to make an enemy of him.
So
And
maybe
now
that's what's going on. I don't know.
So they burn
That's
effigies
going
of
on.
him every year in celebration of how they suppressed the human rebellion. Again,
Right,
right? It's the
right,
same
but
story every time.
and while the other side suppresses it, when all the people come out with a Guy Fawkes mask, and yet some of the normies saying, "Oh, it's a psyop, it's a psyop," you say, "No, it's not a psyop. It's an understanding of history, and there's a reason why the other side does not like the anonymous mask. Now they want to co-opt it. That's fine. They want to co-opt it, but that's not to say that the Guy Fawkes mask and that whole movement is the V Vendetta, however you want to say it, Patriot Truther movement, anonymous movement that utilizes that as a symbol, that's some psyop and they control it all. That's far from it. If they controlled everything, we'd already be lizard food. Okay. The fact that we're here now online having this discussion, releasing as much information as we have, gives proof to this. And so I personally think it's, and I know from my organizing days, it's defeatist to say, oh, it's all a psyop, they control everything. These guys are so pathetic. Look at King Parmalov, Arkeem. That guy can't wipe his own butt. Okay, that's what they're all made up of. And then the super soldiers and people like you who are fucking competent, but they had to
I
enslave
kind of
and
think this is an
exploit.
interesting opinion here. She says it's her belief that the secret space program people were programmed to think that Trump is the best timeline, and that's still programming their timelines where none of them are controlling
So
us.
I have a response to that. Right now, the reality of the United States is that our political system and structure is going to take some time to change. And in the meantime, we're going to have either in this case, a Democratic candidate as president or a red candidate as president. Now, if you've been listening to this whole show, and I think you just got here, we've talked about Trump and experiences in the SSP that people have recall of, which tend to be more in the positive, versus all these other leaders and politicians who tend to be in the really nasty, so negative. We can't even discuss a lot of those experiences here online on YouTube for common folk, right? So, this idea that everyone in the SSP is brainwashed this way to believe Trump is this or that. My response is, not only people in the SSP are getting positive recall of Trump, there's also a lot of other sources, people who are remote viewers. The remote viewers in the community that I trust, the people who are channeling and getting messages that I trust, they all tend to say the exact same analysis that I've been putting forward. Yes, there are people online who they're supposed remote viewers and channelers, and I named some earlier who they think that, and Bashar and Pamela Erlin are two of them, who are there putting out the line that Trump is a World War III timeline and Kamala is the Ascension timeline. Now, I see that as a psyop for all the reasons of the show.
What if it's this? What if it doesn't fucking matter who becomes president, and really it's up to us to just say no to this?
So, Arkeem,
Either way.
2016, did it matter if Hillary became president or not?
We could have maybe averted it if she still became president, but no, the fact that we got rid of her was definitely helpful. But what
Okay, so then it matters. It fucking
it's
matters.
Also, when you look at
say it right now.
United
I'm going to
States
say it
has
right
such
now.
a
I know you guys don't think it matters.
No,
I
it
think
does.
it matters. I think it
The
matters.
U.S. has such a big role. The U.S. has such a big role beyond itself, is what people forget a lot of times too when they're Americans. Like, it determines the course of the relations with the EU, with this, with that. It really pushes things, like with Canada. That's why we're going to have an election changes, simply because it's going to be incompatible. We know where it's going, and stopping the EU is a good thing. Like, anybody who actually follows what the EU is trying to do. It's insane. Like they're trying to create things so
Well,
that they can,
because the
they're
EU,
formalizing censorship laws as we speak. Like they want to make things you just will block automatically. They just want to
Dan,
have the right to do everything like that. It doesn't fit in their
EU,
narrative.
the EU is New World Order
Of course,
for Europe, getting it set up to join with the US. They want the US, Canada, and Mexico, or all of South America to glom into one region. EU's one region, and then they were going to turn all of that into the whole one world order under them, and then then they were going to take that and then try to meet the bare minimum for human civilization to get into the Galactic Federation. And this is according to Christopher Jacobs and Joanna Michaels with their galactic contacts. They're saying, think about it like this: the Illuminati, they want admission of Earth under them into the Galactic Federation so that they can, with an enslaved Earth, engage in all this intergalactic trade and exploitation and be players in the intergalactic game, the galactic game. Okay. And so when we're looking at this is where I see Trump I see him as a King Cyrus figure. For anyone who's read in the Bible, King Cyrus in like ancient Babylon wasn't known to be a follower of the Abrahamic one God. He was a pantheistic worshiper of demons and various gods and entities. And yet he was used mightily to make change on behalf of Source God. Okay. Now, whether you're going to take that or not, that is a metaphor that I have heard so many times applied to Trump. And I believe it's true.
Well, he's a bit of an Apollo archetype when you think about it, Trump. He really,
golden boy, literally a golden boy.
Literally this golden boy. And you look at his mansion there in New York, and that like it's all gold. Like it's literally like these strange things. Like we're reenacting these different archetypes and everything else through these different dramas.
Walkabout with Kyr's bring up a great point. Hillary doesn't matter. Marduk leaving matters. But what I'm going to say here is tactically, Kira, Hillary would have been an agent within the Mardukian type world order. So given that Hillary would be a sock puppet to that order, okay, Hillary does matter, because if you oppose the Anunnaki Marduk continued enslavement of humanity, then you don't want Marduk's sock puppet to win and give us World War III and neutron bomb warfare, right? You know, ultimately, yes, Marduk leaving matters, but there's a lot of steps in between here and there. It's not an instant.
Well, it's a question of would it strengthen the Mardukian position or weaken it? It just it's not if he's
and
gone.
Hillary would strengthen it. Hillary would strengthen
the
Mardukian
like
position.
I've done all the stuff like you talked about the Maritime Admiralty earlier, and I don't think people like some people understand that, but to really understand it, that the Admiralty system as well is really a metaphor of the alien invasion of this world as well, right? And all of these constructs, the way that
metaphor, that is an alien invasion.
It is literally an alien invasion, and that's how they've done it, is through this abstract layer. Think about what the Luciferians introduced to mankind: the invention of writing, law, agriculture. There's very specific.
Well, was it the Luciferians? Necessarily, it's Anunnaki.
Anunnaki. Right, but different traditions are going to say it in different ways, right?
Right.
And that could be seen, and I don't just look at it as necessarily a purely negative thing, right? I just look at them as both all the time. But what you do see is that I do know that it all comes down to securities law. And when we understand finance and law and maritime admiralty law, and we understand globalization, the plan is like the UN. The UN wants every single being to be under that corporate personhood, because that corporate personhood is what formally ties you into the slavery system.
It turns us into a number. They want it. They need to tag us.
Chattel. It turns us into chattel. Yes. Right. Cattle. Chattel.
Owned property.
Movable property. Yep. Movable property. Right.
Yes.
We are chattel. So that system of always trying to expand that personhood and all of the nonsense that goes on within the financial system, that is related to the slavery. And if we can get away from And we notice that globalization, it thrives off of financialization, right? Like that's what makes it money, is this parasitic way of reorganizing the world and chaos.
It's a draconian money system.
Yeah.
You know, now someone in our audience here commenting, right? it's Kira's belief those in the SSP were programmed to think Trump was the best timeline. I mean, look, we've got Arkeem right here. He's literally seen Trump in the SSP in a positive ways, and he doesn't seem to me programmed to think Trump is the end all be
Yeah,
all.
honestly, yeah,
I'm the
I've
one
been
saying
very
at least,
wary of
cast a
Trump.
vote for Trump.
If she
So,
were
and I'm not.
watching this, she'd notice I've kind of been the skeptic of Trump the whole time, and you guys have kind of been like the. But I'm just trying to be the healthy, like. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know,
you're
like,
free
it'd
from
be, I think it's
brainwashing
boring.
and thinking
It'd
he's
be
the best.
boring
You
if
don't sound it.
Don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of dangerous elements. Even somebody like Trump, even if we want to look at him and say, "Oh, he's a good guy," the thing is that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I think anybody is susceptible as well of messing things up. The question is
That's
how.
true. That's the problem. Is that people think that this guy is infallible and that he can't be corrupted, and it's like, well, I don't know. He's like he enjoys the finer things like any other person, and he
But
can.
I'm not saying he's incorruptible. I'm
No,
saying he's got
I'm
to
not
walk a
saying.
line.
Yeah,
This is the thing. I want to
personality
address this.
cults are dangerous,
I want to address this.
regardless.
I want to address this because this to me is a mirage to a large extent being pushed by the other side.
Okay.
It's this automatic assumption if you support Trump, you're like a cult member. Okay. In fact, if anyone, I am very. When you hear me talk to the super pro Trumpers, I'm the one taking Trump off the pedestal and saying he's not Jesus. Okay. But then when I'm talking to the people on the other side, I'm coming across as some hardcore Trumper. And I'm trying to explain this is tactics and strategy.
Sure.
The larger strategy is a full disclosure movement. Right now, tactically, the other side wants their candidate in so bad they will kill, they will cheat, lie, steal, rig, buy off everything. That tells me that tactically it makes sense at this time in junction to support Trump. If there comes a time when he's a president and he's doing messed up shit, I will be the first in line to go after him and to criticize. But it's going to be on a nuanced basis. It's not going to be this I must all or none. That's a mirage. That's a cartoon caricature I'm asking people to drop. It's a really lame way of painting every supporter. Everyone who votes for Trump is a diehard Trumper. You got to drop that. There's a lot of people who they don't like Trump, but they're going to vote for him because we don't like Kamala even more. Okay, does that make me a diehard Trumper?
That's pretty much the
don't
only
think
reason that
so.
anybody's voting for Kamala is because they hate Trump. That's what it seems like to me, anyway.
A lot of elections do.
I wish we could just vote for candidates that we like. That's where I'm at. Like
that's where we're headed. That's where we're going to be headed. That's new.
And
Earth.
Hopefully, even better. Where that kind of thing really isn't necessary. Like that's the whole problem with this, because it is in a way. I respect the people who don't vote. I don't do it just because I don't think my system is fair in being able to represent my needs either. But I mean, part of it is that it is in some ways showing your consent for the system. But I understand from a practical point of view, like you say, Brian, and it's important people think about that. I mean, do you want internet censorship? Because do you want the FBI and these groups like targeting people of certain belief systems because they can, like, nowadays people are being called far right that are just like lefties from the 90s.
Yeah, they were
far right because they don't agree with the new agenda.
Exactly.
Right? So
RFK is considered far right for joining Trump. Okay, this is how lame the discourse has gotten.
Right.
Now, Rita's saying anybody.
This is what's really upsetting to me. Like even in Canada, like people were trying to accuse me of being like far right because I wasn't going along with the mandates. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like
it's gaslighting because it's
not a far right person.
They're not kidding you. It's gaslighting, and that's we don't listen to narcissists when they call us abusers. Okay, we hold the mirror up. Now, Rita Cohen is saying anybody here spend any time trying to imagine Earth as a Type 1 civilization that isn't a totalitarian, authoritarian heart. Well, yes, Rita, we have a movement for you. It's the Full Disclosure Movement, and we're seeking to manifest our Star Trek future, which is a positive future where we have a level 1 civilization where every man, woman, and child is well taken care of. And we, if not have a one world government, which is kind of like more of the Galactic Federation model, we have a world global consensus to how we want to live as a society on this planet that is generally organized enough that we can speak to the galactics as a unified voice and not 50 or 250 different countries at once all bickering. But yes, absolutely. And the way that we get to a level 1 civilization that isn't totalitarian shithole is via the disclosure movement, because it's only by knowing the truth that we as a society can make an informed decision and get to where we want to go collectively.
So this is a theory that I've heard that I kind of think could be true too, is that it's kind of just two different sides of the darkness competing, and maybe he isn't good. But I don't know. With all this remote viewing and all this shit, like, I'm not gonna act like I know everything. I'm not the one who looks into all this stuff, but I just get the feeling that no matter what, we're gonna be on a positive timeline. Things are gonna be good. People aren't gonna freak out. People are gonna be chill. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna get. This is what I'm manifesting. This is gonna turn into the P Diddy thing. Is gonna turn into all these shitty traffickers and people getting arrested. And yeah, I'm not gonna. I'm just remembering. And I guess what I was trying to bring to the table is just the people who are voting for Kamala, who hate Trump and stuff like that. A lot of them are just misled. Like, they're not all evil Satanists or something like that. That's silly. And I think that's the thing that's sad, is you got people who should be getting along manipulated, and you got people at ends with each other, and we have America kind of split down the middle. And my whole thing is, like, don't feed into that kind of division. Like, that's really what I would like to see. And I would like to see just I don't know, I would like to see just the truth to come out about all this stuff. But not only that, like, it's like you said, like a complete reimagining of our society and how everything works, which is not going to be easy. But
it can start with people being tolerant of people having different opinions. That's
which
part
is
of the
something
peace that we
I
need to
think
restore, right? Like, this is
20
important as well. Like, you
2020
just be like, yeah, we don't agree. Huh, he's my neighbor though. He's a pretty nice guy otherwise.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we need to get back to that. Like, America was the place that left Europe because they were tired of the religious wars and all that nonsense back there. Oh, my ancestors left Catholic France because they were Protestant Huguenots. You know what I mean? God forbid you were Protestant back.
I'm going to be the bad guy here.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the bad guy here. I think that the big problem is that people are calling for unity for the sake of unity, and it lacks principles and it lacks a consensus. And what I think we need to do, and why I sound like the bad guy, is because when I'm telling people, literally,
like bad guy.
Well, a lot of
you're trying to be the hairbringer of hope. You know what I mean?
Right, but not to you, Arkeem. But there are people where they hear what I'm saying, and I sound like the bad guy, because what I'm saying is we need to have a clear enough understanding of the truth and the way things are, and then we need to have an informed discussion based off of that. Right now, so many people, and I'll call it out, this whole Wetiko thing, who think all these people think the jabs are good, and transitioning children is good. Children, okay? I'm not. Once you're 18, I'm fine with that. I'm from San Francisco. Said 20 years there. Gay roommates. Like, nah, I'm not. But kids, no. And once people have to see that they are being manipulated, and many of them are going to react badly when they hear myself and other disclosure movement people pointing out that, hey, there are reptilians in control in the main of your blue party there, doing these very particular agendas.
I've heard stuff like even talking about the reptilians is anti-Semitic. That's what I've heard. So they have a lot of trigger terms.
Oh, because it's sort of
things. Right. They got a lot of things.
True on a certain level, eh?
It's not because this whole thing. They're not even Semitic. They are Khazarian mafia.
Right.
Okay. The Khazarian mafia comes out of the Caucasus, Urals area, whatever, around the Ukraine, more around the Caucasus, probably around the Ukraine.
Yeah, the Caucasus,
okay.
And I like this comment too. This is kind of what I'm saying. We just need to be more like about, like, it's not team Trump, Team Kamala, it's Team Humanity, and we're forgetting about that. We're forgetting that we're supposed to all be on the same team, and we are being manipulated.
But this is
whether Trump is like great or not, we're all being manipulated to be in this place where we are combating with each other, and we do think I'm right, you're wrong, and that's what we got to get out of. Regardless of whether we get like a better future because of Trump winning or whatever. Okay, once we get that future, what about all the people who are going to be pissed off because they wanted Kamala to win? Those people
but this is why. But let me explain something here. This is where the hard, real, material reality sets in. Okay, you can have people.
To be patient with these people.
I get that, but yes, absolutely. And I'm going to give the example of the cocktails. Okay, there are a lot of people who I took so much shit for being anti-cocktail and trying to save my loved ones. And my dad died last November from the cocktails. Okay, now there are people who are like, they're taking the attitude that, oh, it's fine for people to live in the world where they think the cocktails are fine and are helpful. Just be loving and let them live that delusion while you live your own. The cocktails are bad knowledge. I say that's not love. If I know the cocktails are bad and they're poison, okay, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to keep telling you, and I'm never going to agree with you and just say, well, I'll agree to say maybe they're okay. I'm never going to do that. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But don't you think because of RFK, this is a huge signal? Like they're not coming
that's
out.
Yes,
it's about food and that. But I mean, if people read his book and understand how well he understands,
RFK had to break away from the blue party to join Trump. So it's not.
Isn't that kind of crazy? Wasn't he a Democrat?
What I'm saying,
yes. Oh yeah, yeah. He's a Democratic royalty. The Kennedys are Democratic royalty.
I'm not saying he's perfect, but what I'm saying is your ability to get that discourse in the public where we do talk about it and say, you know what, we really have to address what happened.
Yes.
And that I think that chance of that dialogue happening occurs under this type of arrangement better.
Yes, but it's a tough love dialogue. It's not like just we're all in it together and we're not going to, because I get accused of, oh, Brian, you're bringing down the vibe. You're a negative agent of darkness because you're bringing down the vibe. It's like, no, we have to do the work of addressing the darkness and
addressing the shadow self is what they call it.
Yes, exactly.
Because if we don't, we know they're going to bring it back.
Right. So the idea is we need unity in the community, but unity in a community that we've done our collective and individual shadow work. Not, oh, none of us have done, or many of us haven't done the right shadow work, and we're just going to glom together as a community. That's not going to help. And that's what we've been seeing this whole time. So I'm trying to just put forward a call to say, okay, let's organize, but we need to organize along shared principles, and we need to have some ground things that we all agree on. Like we have to all agree the cocktails are not in our interest, and then why. If there are people in our movement who still think they're good, and there are those people, and then we're expected to just like get together with them and we're all working together, we're all disclosure. No, it doesn't work like that. And that's where I'm saying, there are times when in a movement it's fewer but better, and you have to thin it out. But then once you've gotten that proper movement and leadership in that core, now that's something for the masses to be truly inspired by and want to be part of. And I think that we need to go through a lot more of this tough love shadow work stuff, way beyond like, oh, can't the community just get along? Honey, we're working on it.
Right. Yeah. I just thought that's funny. I don't mind if you want to take the goo.
Oh, I don't want to take the goo. Don't take the goo.
Well, the reality is that some people tried to talk to your point there and support it, Brian. There's people who did that, and their loved ones did take the goo, and now they're dealing with their loved ones not with them.
Yep.
Yeah, I lost.
Very clearly known.
I lost.
And
one of my best friends growing up, and it's funny because he just died out of nowhere, and no one's like, oh yeah, the cocktail. Nobody made that correlation other than me, and even I have not brought it up to anyone. I just don't have the energy or the heart to explain that to anybody. But it's like, no, he was perfectly healthy, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere he just keeled over and died.
And the research is showing it, right? They're showing the estrogen-based cancers. Like there's the data is coming out. Japan is very exciting about this because Japan already has a population collapse. They're not happy about this. They're actually very open about being candid about what's happened. And I think there's these avenues. We're going to have to really bring out the data, and we're going to say, sorry, like we know now. We know the insurance companies.
Yeah, you keep on bringing up the
there's
fact that, Dan, you keep on bringing up how like they're just like it's kind of come to that point where now it's been 4 years and people are like, oh shit, that was wrong. We did things wrong. And then there hasn't been like the public conversation like, hey, we've kind of fucked up, and how could we handle this better in the future?
With RFK, if we get Trump in and RFK, presumably that's going to happen a lot better than under an administration where they're pushing the jabs still and monkeypox and your boosters. And yes, and I've been one of very vocal critic of Trump for pushing warp speed. But what I say is, fine, he pushed warp speed and he will be cursed for that, for he's got a lot of karma to work off there. But at least he's not pushing it anymore, and he's got RFK. He's very against it. That's very
what I'm saying. It's a big signal.
Also, just think about where he was at there. Let's be real with the warp speed thing. Think about where he was at PR wise, and how if he would have like not done that, how would he have looked, and how would have that panned out for him? You had to think about that. You have to realize that these people got to think about that shit when they make decisions. So
it's
even
true.
if it wasn't,
and that's what you learn in politics
the right
when
decision,
you're trained in
maybe
it.
It was long-term strategy, the right decision.
Politicians always, the one thing you deal with in politics always is who are your stakeholders and how much of a stakeholding do they have in you and whatever is involved. And it's a very complex game of balancing out various interests. It's not as cut and dry as people like to think it is most of the time.
Well, actually, it's easy. They're sold out to the occult elites for the most part.
Right.
Now, I know that we've been going for a while. We should maybe draw this to a conclusion soon because, we're going to be back tomorrow to learn about Operation Oblivion, which the other side is using to retaliate against the movement and the people who've been doing some of the best work, especially recently, have been feeling the pressure.
Are you going to be there for that tomorrow, Dan?
Yeah, what time? 5 o'clock or earlier?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, same bad time, bad place.
It's my Tai Chi is on at 6:30. I'm like, I wish it was a bit earlier. I keep like cutting my Tai Chi, but yeah, I should try to do it anyway. I'll try.
Okay.
Well,
and then
it's only for the first hour.
And then for Rita saying
tomorrow.
Rita, I just want to address one thing before I sign off. Humans are acting like parasitic bacteria. We need to evolve into symbiotic bacteria or mycelium. Yes, and the way we do that is through the full disclosure movement, because as long as we're under Luciferian rule, we're going to be treated like bacteria. Okay, and we need to free ourselves of this. And when we don't have Satanist pedophiles running us, humanity, this is what kills you. Oh, humanity's so bad. Humanity's so bad. No, it's humanity again under 200-something thousand years of Luciferian rule has got issues.
Technically, ET rule, really.
ET Luciferian rule. Exactly.
Literally.
ET rule. Negative ET rule. And so
this whole concept of even money is that this is the means that they conquer planets. Introduce concepts like money. Once they got their foot in the door, it's like the proverbial salesman getting his foot in the door. As soon as they introduce money,
we're screwed. Now, on that note, I got to sign off, guys. I want to thank everyone for being here. I look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow night. And thank you, Dan, and thank you, Archie.
It'll be a refreshing talk tomorrow, because tomorrow, this was a kind of a very ironic stream. We ended up talking about nothing but the election, and it was called the anti-election stream, which, it was fun. It was good. It was sometimes you got to have the uncomfortable conversations to the productive conversations. You know what I mean? So, and then tomorrow, the topic is this Project Oblivion, which is like a self-destruct, not just self-destruct, but like a destruct program on us, a secret space program and time travel assets. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting show tomorrow, and we have SSP royalty with us, Misha Johnson, who and she really has good advice. And
Olivia James, right?
I'm here. I'm
Gray Mouse. Yeah, Gray Mouse. Olivia James is going to be with us, guys. And they're going to share their session.
She's great. I love Olivia too.
She's
Just
amazing.
amazing, really.
Yeah.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
like the real life Black Widow, probably like Scarlett Johansson type.
Well,
the
hey, it's
the
been a
full
good
thing.
show with you guys. Hopefully, the United
Thank you.
States doesn't devolve into chaos overnight, and we are back in the Stone Age within a few days. Or I doubt that'll happen. I think we'll be okay. No, I think we'll be all right. I have a feeling that people are tired of freaking out over stuff. And
They really are. Like, I think the positive thing is to look at all these things where they tried to get people to freak out, they didn't. Like,
yeah,
happened with the BLM, everything.
people
And
are
you know what? Everybody chilled out and just really got back to their senses without major clashes, you know, and that's good. And I think this whole narrative of the Civil War is just this thing, this delusion, morbid
I don't think that's actually
fantasy
gonna
that they
happen.
like to push on people. And I
Yeah,
don't
it's
think
like
it's real at
the
all.
the reality is people are upset over politics, but we enjoy we don't want it to come to that. We enjoy the normalcy we have. Nobody wants it to come to that.
No, it's horrible. So we're going to be okay, and I think a lot of good changes on the way. It doesn't mean it'll be perfect. We're still there to be critically engaged, like you said, Brian. If he does good things, support it. He doesn't do something, you're on him like a dog. You know, and that's the way we should treat all politicians, regardless of what side gets in or whatever. We should be critically engaged. These aren't sports teams. You're not supporters of football clubs in England, for crying out loud. It's supposed to be sensible, rational thinking.
It's great.
So,
Thank
really
you.
great.
Thank you.
I think that's a beautiful note to end
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
I 100%
No,
agree.
Yeah, and we the people have the power. We the people are the
Yes.
ones who are going to change things. It's nice to have an environment where it's easier for us to do it, but it's up to us. So anyway, everybody have a good night. I'm going to end the stream.
You take care.
Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We really appreciate you.